Are we on now? Or?
Yeah, we on. But we just
We
give it
live. Just
give
one
it like
second.
5 minutes. We live.
Okay. Should I wait for an introduction or?
Yes, I'm gonna read your bio and we'll go from there. So we're gonna start at 7:05, all right?
Okay.
They can hear us right now.
Okay. Peace to the family, everybody that's on. I hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation.
Can you just mute yourself really quickly? Because we're about to do our music.
mind, just too much on my mind. Too much on my mind, just too much on my mind. Too much on my mind, just too much on my mind. Too much on my mind, just too much on my mind. My mind.
Peace. Brought to you by Iron Phenomenal Unlimited. This is the Speak Your Mind podcast, hosted by the Queen, Shanice Gatewood Ali, and the God, I Be. Speak Your Mind, an open line podcast, delves into the week's current events, trending topics, and the social issues that affect Black people in America. Peace, 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 peace. We are in the building. We are in the building. This is the Speak Your Mind podcast, special edition. Tonight, we have a very special conversation being conducted and facilitated by my brother, Charles Asukile Mitchell. I keep saying, I want to say Smith all the time. I don't know why. I think I have a friend named Charles Smith, but this brother's name is Asukile Mitchell. And this brother right here, he's prepared. He's been preparing for the last week for this presentation, and this presentation is going to be dynamic. Peace to the Queen. How you doing, Queen?
Peace. How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Peace and family. All those who's watching, thank you for tuning in. Yes, we have a special edition. Usually we have our StreamYard sessions on Sundays, but today is Hump Day.
Hump
Wednesday.
Day.
Hump Day Wednesday. So we are so glad to bring on the king, Mr. Mitchell, who was a part of our discussion actually on Sunday. So he is here to give us some information that everyone just sit back, stay tuned, and keep your ears open to the knowledge that's coming our way.
Actual
Peace.
fact. So as I always start, I definitely want to say today's math, which is February knowledge cipher, wisdom cipher, wisdom knowledge. So knowledge is the accumulation of facts and information, and cipher is any person, place, or thing that is complete in what is put here to do, which is its function. And once you bring the knowledge to the cipher, it always must go back to the knowledge because the cipher is complete and it keeps going. So with that being said, I definitely want to bring the brother into the stream. This is my brother Charles Asukile, brother Charles Asukile Mitchell.
So you said Charles again.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's his name. Charles. His real name is Charles.
Oh, okay.
His real name is Charles, but his is you gotta unmute yourself, brother.
I forgot that it was on. I was saying, yeah, you was about to say it again, but it's all good. I know how the mind works.
Yeah.
How y'all doing this evening?
So my brother Charles Asukile Mitchell, I'm about to read your bio and introduce you so you could get into this beautiful talk that you're about to have tonight. So, who is brother Charles Mitchell? Born and raised in Brooklyn, Charles is a member of the Sons of Africa Brotherhood, created by CCNY by Professor James Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and Professor Edward Scobie, to mentor young men of African descent and prepare them for African manhood. Brother Charles is also a member of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee, an organization dedicated to preserving the history and message of El Hajj Malik Shabazz, aka Minister Malcolm X. MXCC also works for the release of all U.S. held Black political prisoners and prisoners of war, many of whom worked with or were inspired by the work of Malcolm X to fight for true freedom, equality, and opportunity for people of African descent. Brother Charles has spoken to young gang members in the UK on BBC Radio, presented the Education of the Black Child Conference in Manchester, UK, been both a guest and a guest host of Delani Iman's Harambe internet radio station. He has also been a guest on the Where We Live radio show on WBAI here in New York. He is also one of the brothers entrusted by the OAAU to help facilitate the annual Malcolm X pilgrimage to Ferncliff Cemetery. The pilgrimage has been held every year on Malcolm's birthday, May 19th, since his violent assassination. It was created by Malcolm's older sister, Ella Collins, and continued by OAAU leaders, Professor James Small, Wendy Starks, and others to remember Malcolm's principled African leadership and his unflinching sacrifice for people he so loved. This year is the 56th anniversary of the pilgrimage and would have been Malcolm's 96th birthday. Brother Charles adopted the name Asukile, an African name meaning the Lord has blessed me, to remind himself of the many blessings that he has received and must share with others. As a student, Brother Asukile fought to keep the City University of New York affordable and open to students in the communities of color that surround schools like Brooklyn College, City College, and the other colleges that make up the CUNY system. He loves to work with the community, particularly elders and young people, and he has used professional and volunteer opportunities whenever possible to help others. He is also a trained sexual and reproductive health educator and workshop facility. So let's all welcome Brother Asukile Mitchell.
Peace, family. How's everybody? I hope everybody's doing well. I'm saying how's everybody like I'm expecting them to say. I forget I'm on video. They can't respond. But I'm extremely honored to be here with you guys tonight to continue this conversation that we have been having, rather I should say, because it's an important conversation. It's important for us to understand where we are right now and where we need to go in the future. But in order to do that, we have to have an understanding of our history and what we did as a people and what we continue to do despite the onslaught. So hopefully tonight my presentation will be able to lay out some of the things that are before us so that we can move forward as a people and take care of this business that needs to be taken care of, which is, I don't know if y'all can see, my family reunion t-shirt,
Nice.
Patterson
Nice.
and Bruce. So this is what it's all. I made sure I was looking for. I always wear t-shirts, and all my t-shirts have messages on it. Usually, I have a lot of stuff from Moshu, but then I have like Brooklyn t-shirts and Run DMC t-shirts, whatever. But when I was looking, I saw this. My this is our first family reunion, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, this is the 91. The first one was pretty much the same time, 76, 77, when everybody had started having family reunions after watching the Root saga. It became a phenomenon of people creating family reunions because they started to realize how important the ties are that bind us. So digging it out, I said, let me wear this tonight. I usually present with a dashiki or something on, but I wanted to make sure that we stay focused, that it's about the family. So if do you have any questions or anything before I start, brother, sister?
Yes, I do have a question. You the other day you gave me a link to uh Dr. Leonard Jeffries to the presentation that he was giving.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean it was an excellent presentation. But I noticed like one thing, he kept going back to family. They wanted him to talk about a lot of individuals, but he kept going back to family.
that's
Is
right.
could you give me some of the reasoning for that?
Because I've been with Dr. Jeffries since 1990, and how that happened was just to backtrack just a little bit. I was at the time I was working part time and going to school at Brooklyn College part time. I worked at Lord and Taylor in the training department. So during the days at that time, Gary Bird had a show called the GBE, the Gary Bird Experience. And at that time, he was at the Apollo Theater. And this was unique because he opened the theater up. You didn't have to pay to come in the theater. Anybody could, if you're walking down 125th Street in Harlem and you didn't have anything to do, you could just walk in and sit in the audience and watch Gary Bird interview all these amazing scholars, politicians, community leaders, uh, uh, folks that had a message that needed to get out, whether it was their own need or whatever. And so this one particular day, I'm in the training room putting together manuals for the training packets, and Dr. Jeffries was on. And as I'm sitting there putting together my stuff, I had to like stop a few good times, and because what he was saying was so profound. and that began my association with Dr. Jeffries in 1990. And then from then I went. He had an African community education, or as he was calling it at that time, the 50-week course that was open to the public to walk into City College Black Studies Department every night for over a year. It says a year, but it was actually over a year. And it culminated with people taking trips to the motherland, usually to Ghana, sometimes to Kemet. Um, but that association, but throughout that association with Dr. Jeffries, he has always been one to talk about history in terms of families, in terms of groups of people, in terms of schools of knowledge. So when you look at Dr. Jeffries is not Dr. See, they like to teach us history. They like to throw facts and dates at us as if it's individuals, as if, or black first, the first one to do this, the first one to do that. But it's not a question of black first. It's a question of the family unit, the community unit that is around each of these people that they throw up as being these first. They didn't happen in a vacuum. They were groomed to be the way that they were. Dr. Jeffries was groomed to be the way that he was. He often talks about, and I'm sure you heard his mother grooming him, and as he calls it, pablum, which was back at what we would call formula, or Similac nowadays. His formula was Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Marcus Garvey. That's what his mother groomed him, or raised him, and nurtured him and his brother, Baba Marlon, on. So Dr. Jeffries is not a standalone phenomenon. And then he also talked the other night, I'm sure you remember, of he was I think it was a graduation speech he had to give, and his mother told him to go to the community leader. I forgot what he said her name is, but he went and knocked on her door at 12 or 13 years old, and said his mom had sent him, and she started asking questions. What are you about? What are you doing? And he said, well, right now what I'm doing is I'm preparing a graduation speech. And she said, let me hear it. So he began to give her his graduation speech. And she seen the genius in him, said that you are going to give this speech before my group. And the next thing you know, he started as a youngster speaking to large groups of black people in the Newark community. And so he was groomed. But just like he was groomed, Asa Hilliard was groomed. Naeem Akbar was groomed. I myself, to some degree, was groomed. I was loved. I wish I was groomed more, actually, but I was groomed because I still, growing up in the crack era, I was one of the few brothers on my block that had more of a conscience not to engage in that type of behavior. And it's because I was groomed by my mom, by my adopted grandfather, Frederick Oliver Westerman. Let me say my mother's name, Brenda Joyce Beaton was her maiden name. Ibaye, may she forever, because she's passed away, may she forever reign in heaven, have rest in heaven. Frederick Oliver Westerman Sr., Mansour Mani, who's my uncle, Beatrice Beaton, who was my grandmother. Those are the people that surrounded me with love and gave me the basis of being an African who was loved and loves his community. But with Dr. J, I learned not just to be a black man in America, I learned how to be an African. And so, but for Dr. J and Professor James Small and my big brothers like Brother Reggie, who many of you know from Sada, the TV show, Brother Selwyn, Brother Derek, Brother Akil, these are my big brothers in the Sons of Africa. And they helped me to be the kind of man that I am today. And my brothers in my peer group, my brother Ricardo, my brother Harry, my brother Henry. It's because of them that I learned how to be an African man on top of just being an African American man. And so I'm extremely grateful for that. But this is a family. So this is what it's all about. It takes a community that even Hillary Clinton knows that it takes a village to raise a child. But we have to have socialization processes, and that's where rites of passage, as we understand it, comes in.
That's excellent. So one other thing I wanted to talk about just before you start, you said that you were integral in helping to keep prices down at City College and other colleges that's in the New York system. Is that
Well,
true?
I wouldn't say that I'm integral. I'll say that I was one of many students, and I have friends who are more of the leaders at Brooklyn College, but I also have friends at City College, where the Sons of Africa was based. And there were two during the time when I was in and out of school. There were two student takeovers. Um, one was what was that was one was like 88, 89. It could have been a little earlier, and then we had the big one in 1990, which was the longest takeover in city university history, where several colleges and universities were taken over. And I wouldn't say I was a leader. I was more, but I was a student that was engaged in that. And why do we engage in it? Because in where history comes in again. Most young people going to City College or any of the City University of New York schools now don't understand that at one time, City College, Brooklyn College, Hostos Community College, and so forth were free. That means that Jewish people and Protestants, mostly white folks, a few blacks and Latinos were allowed to go to school free of charge. In fact, City College of New York, where Dr. Jeffries worked for over 40 years, was called the Jewish Harvard because Jews weren't allowed to go to Harvard and those elite institutions, but they entered City College, and from City College, they went on to do great things and contribute to America, and particularly to the Jewish community. So not having to worry about tuition fees is a big thing. It's a big thing for a child that has nothing or a family that doesn't have anything. I remember myself when I was choosing the school, I got accepted to Prairie View A&M, and I got accepted to Brooklyn College. Prairie View A&M was I knew my mother couldn't afford Prairie View A&M, which might have been a better school for me, but I wound up choosing Brooklyn College because it was cheaper. Now imagine if I didn't have to worry about room and board and tuition. I could have just concentrated on my scholastic activities. Many of us are in a place where we can't, because of economics, concentrate on the activities. And young people today not understanding the history that at one time the school was free, just take it for granted that they have to pay tuition. So my generation of students in the university system still had that history. So we understood the importance of keeping tuition low for Black folks from the Americas, for Black folks coming out of the Caribbean, coming to America as immigrants trying to make a way out of nowhere, for white folks even coming from Europe, Latino folks coming from Central and South America. City College was a vehicle, even though we still had to pay, it was a vehicle that we could expand ourselves and improve our lives and situations. So as a student, we realized that the importance of keeping the tuition low, and that's what we were fighting, not just for us, but for the future generations. But now the future generations don't know that history to the degree that they should. So they think it's when you don't know what you could have, you don't know what you need to fight for a lot of the time.
Yo, I mean, I'm just happy. I'm happy that that it was people out there fighting for that movement because I'm a graduate from the CUNY system. I just graduated from Lehman College, and I previously graduated from the CUNY School for Unique and Interdisciplinary Studies. And it was very helpful that those schools wasn't charging the amount of money that other schools like they was trying to recruit me to go to Columbia, but they wanted to charge like 99, 103,000 or something like that. It was a lot of money. And also the my dream school, which was NYU, they wanted something heavy up there like that too. And I was like, nah, I would rather just go to this CUNY school, get my degree, and make sure everything is straight.
Right. And like I said, that not having that money, see, if you understand the school system, so depending, I mean, it's depending on your own dependent drive as well. But there are tiers in the college and university system, right? The City University of New York and State University of New York are mostly geared towards creating people that could go into civil service jobs or mid management, white collar and lower white collar jobs, right?
Hmm.
Um, NYU, Columbia, um, Brown, those type of schools take you to another level. if you go to Harvard, either Harvard and Yale are probably two of the biggest. Princeton and some other ones are underneath that. But if you go to Harvard and Yale, the sky's the limit in terms of what you could do. Not just civil service in New York State. You could be president. Like a Barack Obama. Barack Obama went to where? Harvard for law school. And I think he also went there for his bachelor's or master's. So when the school that you go in, the way the system is set up, it will elevate you and connect you with the network to allow you to do greater things. So even though having a degree is better than having no degree at all, we need to be conscious of what these schools and how the system. Dr. Jeffries talks about systems analysis. There's a system to the education system, and we need to understand how that works.
Okay. So you have any questions, Queen, before he starts?
No, I'm just sitting back like, wow, okay. Thank you.
Giving it up. Giving it up. He about to go in right now.
I can imagine. Let him do his thing.
Okay, so share your screen, brother.
All right. All right. Share screen.
Once again, this is the Speak Your Mind podcast.
All right, hold on, brother. There you go. There you go. So tonight's conversation is continuing the rites of passage discussion. It's entitled Rites of Passage, or Why is there Hell Up in Harlem and Bed-Stuy and Chi-Town, and basically any place where there are Black folks right now, you can insert in that, etc. So before I begin, again, I just want to thank you, sisters, the Allis, for allowing me to take this time, in fact, for creating a special show for me tonight, just based on the strength of me saying I had prepared a presentation. So I wasn't expecting to be given, another show. So this is indeed a pleasure for me. And I hope that young people, if you're near young people, family, I want to tell you to go get those young people and let them sit down with you. I want you to get a piece of paper.
Sound kind of muffled. Your mic sounds kind of muffled. It's like kind of scratchy.
Can you hear me?
I hear you, but it's kind of scratchy.
All right. I don't have the mic set up to, so you're gonna have to hook me up with the tech going forward so I can do podcasts.
All right.
But I'm gonna tell
right now.
I want everybody, if you can, to get some paper because you might want to take notes and a pen. All right, and make sure that if there's any young people near you that they come and sit down and watch this with you so you can have a conversation with them, because that's why I do this.
It's real scratchy.
That's why I do this. It's still real scratchy.
Yeah.
But hold on a second.
You moving closer. Yeah.
Hold on a second. Let me do something to lift up where the mic is. Oh, hold on a second. Let me see something. I'm gonna put in my headphones and see if that works better.
Okay.
How's this?
That's way better.
All right. So did you hear anything I said just now, or was too scratchy?
I was hearing you. It just was kind of I don't want it to be distorted because you're giving out good information. It should be very good. You know what I mean? The audio.
Right. All right. So hopefully us chit chatting just now was enough time for whoever that needed to run and go get some paper and a pen and to go get those youngsters. So we're gonna move into the presentation. So the first thing that I want to say is that we have to understand a few things. African people are primary to the human experience. Primary means first. It doesn't necessarily mean better, although in my mind we are better. If there are no Africans, there are no humans. Humanity started with the African quote-unquote race. First thing we need to understand. Second thing,
I don't know what the
white
issue is with
so-called supremacy. White so-called supremacy, racism, and capitalism are predicated on the destruction of Africans, African personhood, African families, African communities, and definitely self-determined, self-empowered African nations. White supremacy, racism, and capitalism can't exist without African or Black. I'll be using both terms interchangeably throughout the program. land, labor, and resources, black skills, and black mental genius. Indeed, the very foundation of the system is the enslavement of African peoples. Capitalism starts with the first sales of stock in Holland, excuse me. The Dutch East Indian and Dutch West Indian companies are the first corporations that sold shares and stocks to average poor Europeans. Prior to this, we have to understand that if somebody wanted to have a expedition adventure, they went to the kings and queens of Europe, or a duke or somebody that was landed, meaning they had land, to ask for funds. But the Dutch East Indian and the Dutch West Indian companies are the first to offer shares to poor white folks that funded the ventures into Africa, into the Americas, and into Asia to exploit the indigenous peoples and their lands. This is what the American dream is now: the accumulation, the hope of accumulation and of enough wealth to improve your personal and family situation. Last thing we need to understand before we proceed is that white supremacy, racism, and capitalism will not stop the systematic destruction of Africans on its own. It can't, because to stop exploiting Africans would mean the collapse of Western society. All the world's devices, the cell phones, the TVs, and so on, all of the minerals, or the major sources of the minerals that make these things uh, available to us, come from Africa. And so if white supremacy stopped exploiting Africa and African peoples, that means it would have to pay fair market prices for our minerals and resources and labor. And it can't afford to do that because the system would collapse if it had to treat us fairly. So in order for us to understand this, I'm going to use Dr. Jeffries' model, what he
Are you frozen? You froze up. Oh man, he might have froze up for a second. Bear with us while he comes back on. I'm gonna text him right now to make sure everything is good. Hold on for 1 second. Ah, yeah,
Okay.
You back? You
yeah, yeah,
back?
yeah. You checked out for a second, but you
Oh,
back.
okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Share your screen again.
All right. Am I back?
Yeah, you back. Oh, well, your screen is not back.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. Make sure I share the screen. So, give me 1 second, family. There you go. All right. Can you see it now?
I'm about to add it.
Can you can you see it now? Can you see the screen?
No, I can't see anything.
There we
It's
go.
coming up now.
All right.
Yep, there we go.
All right. So we'll continue. What's the? Let me just check. Did you hear what I said as far as this slide? The first things first slide.
No,
Hello.
say it again. No, you're gonna have to say it again.
I
So
know I
this whole
heard Dr. Jeffries,
no this the slide that says
the
first
first
things
one.
first.
Mm-hmm.
You heard everything on this slide, right?
We didn't hear the ending.
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna just recap. I said that white supremacy and racism will not stop the systemic destruction of Africans on its own. It can't, because to stop exploiting Africans would mean the collapse of Western society. And what I mean by that is, for example, if we look at the cell phone, if we look at TVs, if we look at rubber that's on the bottom of our sneakers, the major sources for those are in Africa. So if they were to pay African people fair market value for their natural resources, that would mean that they wouldn't be able to make the profits that they're making. Their society would collapse. So we need to understand that before we go forward. All right. So to help us in this conversation, I'm going to use this model: thesis, antithesis, synthesis. My brother Charles, you're going to say, what the heck is that? Well,
Dialectic. Yeah.
this is what we call This is what Dr. Jeffries calls his pyramid analysis. Thesis, your starting principle. It could be economics, which is based on ecology. In your family, you could say that it's your mother. Antithesis, the opposite force or the complementary force. This is politics or sociology. And you could say in your family that that's the father. And the synthesis is culture, which is based on psychology. And the synthesis in your family would be you as the child. That's the easy way for us to understand this complicated principle or model of analysis. At the center, I know you can see there's a black woman there. That black woman is my aunt. And that she was best chosen for this because my aunt is at the core of the spiritual values of African peoples of Kemet, what folk call Egypt. But there are other systems coming out of Africa that don't necessarily call her my aunt, but they have a core values, interests, and principles at their base. And so in the mix of these things, competing and working together and interacting, the core spiritual values of the people is what guides them in creating their economics, which guides them in creating their politics, which guides them in creating their culture, the way that they think and so forth. It guides them, again, looking at ecology, guides them in the way that they interact with the ecology, meaning the rest of nature, the rest of humanity. Does it treat them just like material, or does it treat them like spiritual beings having a material existence, as Brother Small says, right? So this is key to us understanding, and so let's proceed. So when we look at the African model, as Dr. Jeffrey says, because it's based in Ma'at, it's cooperative, meaning we work together. It's collective, meaning everybody has a part to play. And it's communal, meaning that everybody in the community is taken care of. You're with me?
We with you.
Yes.
All right. Now, how do we know this? And okay, my motto is a little sly. I didn't put this on the thing. All right. Well, you can't see it. Let me do one thing quick. I'm gonna do one thing quick.
What happened to him? I hope he blocked himself out. What's going on? One thing I tell you, these computer systems ain't all they cracked up to be. With this Wi-Fi and all of this other stuff, it's hard to keep a stream going sometimes. It's just difficult because you have all these different.
Okay.
Okay, you
Excuse,
back.
excuse me. I'm back. Sorry about that. So let me back this up a little bit. I didn't realize I didn't put the fly on here. Uh,
King Mitchell, we can't see your face.
all right. Hold. Give me 1 second. I didn't realize it. I forgot to put the last two images on right. So can you see my screen still?
No.
No.
All right. Hold on 1 second. I apologize for this, family. I didn't realize that I forgot. See, I was still adding things up until today. And that's why the last couple of images, I forgot to put the little slide feature on it. So we're going to try this again for current slide. All right. So you see this image here, King Tut, for instance.
Hold on, I'm bringing it up. There you go. We see it.
So most folks will know about King Tut from this goal. And that's where the Western value system moves us towards. The goal. It's all about the goal. It's all about cash money, cream. But they never show us this image of King Tut, the African, right? But it's more deeper than King Tut, because behind King Tut or preceding King Tut was another king who is where we're going with this story. And that king is King Akhenaten, who you see there with his wife Nefertiti. King Akhenaten is important because he is the manifestation of the African value system in his time. Prior to Akhenaten taking the reign, Egypt or Kemet was becoming corrupt in its morals and value system. The priests, who are the viziers and scientists and so forth of Kemet, are more caught up in material as they worship the god Aten. But then Akhenaten comes along worshiping one god, and he's the first on recorded history to worship, to be noted for worshiping in a monotheistic way. And he moves the capital of Kemet from its previous location to a new location, a new city of God, as Dr. Jeffries says to us all the time. He reclaims, how should I say, he brings Africa back in Kemet back to its center, where the material is ruled by the spirit first, not the material ruling over spirit. And that's how we interact as Africans, and that's what we need to go back to in a more serious way. So Akhenaten is important in that regards. And here you see, just want to show you this. It's cut off. You see Nefertiti there holding the child on the other side, cut off by this important lady in the center, who I'm going to address is Akhenaten. But you see the solar disc. The solar disc is representative of Aten. And you see the little hands coming down, because the Africans, I guess you could say, anthropomorphized, or they used animals, they used images of nature to represent deep values that they wanted to keep transmitting for eternity. And I told one brother, I asked one brother one time, they had paper, they had what they call papyrus at that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they could have written on paper if they just wanted to record history. I asked one brother, why do you think they carved this in stone? And why do you think they used, and they had different forms of script as well. So that this script that's on here is what they call the Medunata, but they also had Demotic script and hieratic script and some other scripts that they use for administrative basis. But this particular type of script is an image-based script. Why? Anybody care to give me a guess?
Image-based script. They probably using an image-based script because you could relate to it more than just writing. You could visualize it.
Exactly. So even a farmer that may or may not be educated, or a so-called peasant that's uneducated, they know what the sun is. They know what a cow is. They know what the papyrus leaf is, right? And they understand how it interacts with nature. They understand that life comes through the sun's rays, being transmitted into the chlorophyll in the plants and so forth to create life. They understand that when the sun goes down, it's colder. The sun brings warmth. They understand that. And so that I say, and until somebody proves me wrong, I'm going to keep saying that I'm saying to you that they understood the deep psychological principles behind this. Today we would call this a meme.
Right.
You know how you have a meme, and
right.
A meme is an image that everybody can instantly relate to, whether or not it has words and everybody knows it's funny or sad or to be shocked or whatever. These are the comedic memes. But I want to bring you back now to this lady in the center. This lady in the center is the mother of Akhenaten. She is Queen T. And if you have any doubt about who she is, I want you to look at that image. Both images, by the way, have her wearing the feathers of Ma'at, and I believe that's Hathor in the image of the just the head. But Ma'at is always at the center of our interactions, and she is the Queen Mother, is a representative of Ma'at on earth. But guess what? So is every black woman a representative of Ma'at on earth. Every black woman is the keeper of our culture. Every black woman is the one who holds the men in line. But we've forgotten that because of our socialization process. Our sisters should not be carrying themselves, some of them, the way that they carry themselves. Our sisters are the keepers of our culture. That's why other men, even though they don't necessarily respect their women, they will defend their women to the death, because without the women, there is no continuation of life. There's no continuation of family. Now, to juxtapose the African model of thinking, we look at the European model of destruction, domination, and death, which is based around core spiritual values of profit, of material is the most important thing. And as again, we thank Dr. Jeffries for giving us this analysis so that we can look at the world in a different way. So what's going on in the Black community? We see males versus females. We see elders disrespecting the youth, and the youth pushing back against that disrespect and lack of protection. As I said in the other show, when we said who's the fault, is it the young people's fault? Well, young people don't raise themselves. The elders around them are supposed to be raising them. And if the elders are not doing their job, that means that they're basically, without saying it, they're disrespecting the youth. And so the youth, in order to defend themselves, have to push back to keep the onslaught off of them, much in the way, as I'm going to discuss a little later, as our sisters in our community, the women that they're calling angry Black women. All of that is a self-defense mechanism to protect themselves against the onslaught that society and unfortunately too many Black men in our community are waging against them. Now, to continue, we also see sexual and gender confusion and an abuse of the sexual self. And by that, I mean reckless and unhealthy sexual activity. People are confused of their men and women bodies, and women and men's bodies. But the confusion, when you look at the confusion, is it just confusion, or is it frustration? Or is it lack of being defended? Or is it lack of being nurtured? Or is it even a diet? Because that's one thing that we don't talk about, the diet. There's a study about a chemical called atrazine that was done by a brother in the California university. He found that atrazine, which is used in the production of corn, and if you know corn is in everything. If it's not directly as corn, it's as in corn syrup, which is sold as a sweetener across the world. But the atrazine is used in part of the process of growing corn and several other crops. I think sugar and some other crops. I wish I had my notes for that. The brother, if you want to look for it, or look for atrazine on Democracy Now!, they did an extensive interview with that brother, whose name escapes me at this minute. So when we have sexual and gender confusion, but you're going back to that, a lot of times you see when there's two females or two women and two men, one male is always more feminine than the other male. One female is always more masculine than the other female. So in a sense, it's still the male and female dynamic. So it's not that they don't want men. It's for some reason, whether it's rape or abuse or the lack of a father, they don't know their place in the world, or they don't feel defended. So in women, the masculine energy comes up. In men, the feminine energy is being nurtured, because usually they're surrounded by a lot of women, the mothers and sisters and aunties, and there's no man stepping up to assume the role that he should be assuming. Now, there could be some people that are just genuinely gay and lesbian. That's different than people dressing like men, or what they call performing. What's the word that they use? It's gender roles. They're performing the gender role of a female, even though they may be biologically a male. Right? There's a difference. Now, I'm not going to say that in the course of African human history that there's never been any gay or lesbian people, or that there's never been no twin spirits, because in the Native American tradition, there is a tradition of twin spirits. So we have to be real. But I'm saying to you, to the public, that a lot of what's manifested is not the natural manifestation. It's a manifestation caused by some pathology or some chemicals that's being introduced in our systems. So what else do we see in the Black community, though? We see detachment from the world and antisocial behavior. especially around kids who are playing these computers and always on the video games.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lack of social communication skills. There's a lack of emotional immaturity, and there's a um, predetermination to be violent. And while I'm here, I just want to stop because after our conversation the other day on Sunday, yesterday, an event happened to me that kind of shook me and made my resolve even stronger. I was on my way by car to Dr. Jeffries' house, and I was in Bed-Stuy picking up some fish for my sister to bring her while I'm on my way to his house. And I go through a narrow block, I think it was by PS 26, I think is the school. And the snow was outside and everything, so there's not good parking. So young brother is double parked and he's out further than he should be. So I try to slowly go through the space between him on my right and the car parked on my left. And so mirrors tapped. And so I stopped. I was going to back up. But before I had a chance to back up, the young brother jumps out his car at me. Then he doesn't just jump out. A brother on the passenger side jumps out. Matter of fact, let me back it up. The brother on the passenger side jumped out first because what happened, the brother, when I tapped his window, he opened his window screaming, upset. You broke my mirror. You broke my mirror. And he pulled in front of me to cut me off. So I'm like, oh, what's going to happen now? So the other brother got out on the passenger side and he's tapping on my passenger window. Then the driver got out and he came around the car on my side. And so he's like, yo, you broke my mirror, son. You broke my mirror. Yo, I just paid all cash for this, which means that he probably in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, yo, you broke my mirror. You broke my mirror. Yo, son, you're going to have to come up off a buck. You're going to have to come up off a buck. I said, young brother, I did not break your mirror. I said, he said, you was going to try to drive off? I said, I wasn't going to try to drive off. I was about to reverse my car and move back and either move my mirror in or try to move over to the side, to, a little closer to the parked car so I could skinny through there. And he's like, nah, son. So I said, I've tried to get out the car one time. And then all the while, mind you, he had his hand in his pocket. He had his hand in his pocket like he had a burner. For those that don't know, burner is a gun. So I finally got out the car. I said, brother, let me show you something. I got out the car, went around to his car. I showed him that the mirrors today I made to move forward. And so first I moved it the way that he wasn't accustomed to it, going towards the front. He's like, yo. Then I moved the mirror like you normally would when you tuck your mirror in if you're on a narrow street or something. And then I did it a couple of more times. And I said, see, brother, the mirror is not broken. So first of all, that indicated to me that the brother clearly is not around brothers that, older guys and used to, that work with cars and stuff. He don't have a male figure that would teach him stuff like that about how, cars work and all of that. So that's the first thing that came to mind. But in the conversation, when he was carrying on, I said, brother, I didn't mean no disrespect. First of all, I said, young brother, I didn't mean no disrespect to you. There's a misunderstanding. I apologize for tapping your mirror. I'm not going to fight you over this. He said, oh, there ain't going to be no fighting. Mind you, right hand still in his coat pocket. So anyway, as a result, and I showed him that the mirror is not broken and how it moves or whatever. He moved the car out the way, and he goes to me, man, go ahead, get out of here. Like he's in charge of me. But as I drove to Dr. Jeffries' house, keeping in mind we just had a conversation on Sunday about rites of passage and men attacking the women in the community, the young males attacking the women in the community. It just hit me. My heart was heavy because I spent 30 years working with my people, loving on my people, and working with Dr. Jeffries. And I could have been just another statistic. Nobody who didn't know me would know that if they saw me on the news, everything that I put my life and soul into loving Black people. But this is the condition that our young people are in. It's part of a process of socialization. So anyway, let's just continue. Poor personal coping skills in institutions.
And this applies not only to young black people, it's also applying to young white people, meaning that this, when they incur stress, they can't handle stress. They don't know how to cope with it, and it's leading to more suicides and addictions than ever in recorded statistics history. And the addictions I want to just mention include phones and computers, as well as drugs, video games, sex, shopping, and food. For a lot of women, their addiction is shopping, what they call shopping therapy. And that's how they handle their stress. They go shopping. There's sisters with 200, 300, 400 pairs of shoes in their closet, overweight, unhappy, unsatisfied with their relationships with men, not loving on themselves as much as they love on everybody else. And that is because of stress, the stress of racism and white so-called supremacy. I have to keep making sure I say so-called supremacy because there's nothing about white folks and white systems that's supreme. Anyway, what's going on in the black community continued. There's a detachment of the spiritual life from the physical or material life. Old school folks would call this living worldly, especially if they was Christian folks. And your mother being a Christian, brother, I'm pretty sure she said that a time or two. Or your grandmother, somebody has used that term, being worldly, being in the world and of the world instead of living for God. And that sometimes, sadly, includes those who go to church regularly. In fact, it includes some of the preachers that preaching this prosperity gospel. In the black community, as well as the larger community, we also see a reduction in marriages and two-parent homes. The African extended family structure is eroded if it's there at all. Their youth growing up unprotected from society's worst and ill-equipped mentally, emotionally, and physically and socially to function beyond survival. Can you hear me, family?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what's worse than all of that is that there are two very anti-African streams of knowing, believing, and justifying, which is what epistemology means. What are your beliefs? What do you know? How do you know what you know? How do you know that it's real? And how do you justify it? Seeing reality, looking at the earth, looking at our place in this world, and seeing what's real versus what's make believe and what's on Twitter, what's on Facebook, what's on Snapchat. Valuation ethics or axiology. What are your values? How do we know that your values? And why, comparing values between cultures. That's what axiology is. So these different streams, these different anti-African streams have emerged as predominant. One, with Western capitalist middle class aspirations to become elites, and another with a pretended disdain for middle class aspirations and a desire to reach the elite status via being hood rich, N words, B words, thugs, and thoughts. Both are striving to achieve the quote unquote American dream of acquiring sufficient capital. That should be an A. I got to correct that. I always corrected myself. Capital TAL. And acquisitions to be lifted out of their poor middle class problems. Both are consciously or not are thinking people of European descent will accept them, meaning treat them like human beings if they show them they are, quote, worthy of it by their wealth accumulation and hard or smart work. Both think that if they could build some wealth or some businesses or buy a house for their children or their families individually for them and theirs, it would make it better, not understanding that racism, so-called white supremacy, and capitalism is a system that is geared to reabsorb everything that a black generation can generate, one black generation can generate within 2 or 3 generations after that, while within the system of white supremacy. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times today, we see people teaching us about fixing our credit or buying there's some kind of device you could buy, some kind of credit line that you could buy that you could improve your credit score. People think that if I could buy houses, or at least buy a house for my family to live in, people think that if I can accumulate wealth, much like uh, Reginald Lewis accumulated wealth when he created Beatrice. I don't know if you remember that company and him. He passed away some time ago of an aneurysm, but he owned a company that owned many companies, including the company that makes Tropicana orange juice.
Wow.
And he died, and he was married to a Filipino woman. So all his wealth left the black community and went to the Filipino community. And that's another subject. What happens when you marry outside of the black nation? Your wealth doesn't continue in the black nation. It continues or is transferred to other nations. But the system is set up so that even if I could get something, like our ancestors got some land after slavery, they had hundreds of millions of acres of land. But now in 2021, most of those acres of land have been reabsorbed by white folks in the Sea Islands and other places along the seashore where white folks realized they could create resorts and stuff. A lot of African folks used to live in those areas, but they cheated them and used other means to steal their land back from them within a generation or two. So many of us whose family had hundreds of acres of land can no longer say that because the system is geared to take back everything that it gives to black folks. And us not having our own system to compete against that, we fall into the whims of the other folks. I always say, you can't come in somebody's house playing spades and try to bring your spade playing rules into their house or your checker rules into their house. Like, you know, when I was a little kid, everybody, like I played double and triple jumps and backward jumps. Everybody didn't play backwards and triple jumps. Mm. So if I come in your house, I got to play by your rules. You know what I'm saying? And that's where we are. We're playing by European rules, Western rules, and we have to get out of that mindset. Anyway, so the primary difference between the two streams is that the poor and middle class to elite aspirant usually exhibits behaviors and composures that we would ascribe as being bougie, while he or she works legally or at the very least commits so-called white-collar crimes, which are so supposedly not serious, which are often more serious because they devastate millions of people. Like Bernie Madoff is a white-collar crime criminal, but he wiped out people's whole furniture future. He took away people's Social Security in their old age. People that were 70 years old, 80 years old, 60 years old that thought they could retire and at least have something or enough to get by had to go back to work. And some even went as far as they had to go back and work at McDonald's. So that was a white-collar crime. To achieve his goals, while the hood rich aspirant is more willing to commit obviously destructive acts. And these acts are almost always against his own people to achieve his goals. I want to point out something that this great black bald-headed man said so many years ago. You see Dr. J, you see Dr. Jack Felder, and you see our bald black power general, Minister Khalid Abdul Muhammad. And some time ago, there's a recording of him that Public Enemy used. And at the end of his statement that they clipped, it says that many of us, by the way we've acted, we've even lost our minds. So being that January is the birth month of Dr. Khalid, I wanted to make sure to get him in there and give his spirit a hearty Ibaye, and for my Muslim brothers, peace be upon them.
Question. Mm-hmm. You keeping it on the same slide for the entire presentation?
Just keeping what on the same slide?
You've been on the same slide for a while. You haven't changed the slide. You keeping it on the same slide?
No. What slide do you see? It should be on the slide of Khalid Abdul Muhammad now.
No, it's just showing us. It's showing us the same picture with my eye.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not a bad one to be on. But now I moved. Hold on a second. Let me.
Well, the same picture. I shouldn't say my eye. I should say whatever the queen was with the feathers in the middle.
Queen T. Yeah. Remember that name, brother. We're We're gonna grill you on in homework. We're gonna grill you in the quiz later.
Okay. Green tea.
All right. I don't know why my cam stopped. Where's my cam stop? Okay, there you go.
Right.
All right, so let's try this again. You see me now, right?
Yeah, I see you.
All right, so I'm gonna try to share the screen back to. I'll tell you the technology.
Yeah, it's just crazy sometimes. In person is always better.
Yep.
There we go.
Okay, so I just let you. This is what I was saying the last couple of slides.
Okay.
So you said you only saw T. So can you see this? What's going on in the Black community?
It says both are striving to achieve the American dream of acquiring sufficient capital and acquisitions to be lifted out of the poor or middle class problems. That slide?
Okay, I think it got stuck somewhere. Hold on. Okay. Okay. Now, do you see the slide with Khalid Abdul Muhammad and Dr. J?
No.
Why is it not showing? Can you see it now?
No. Did you put it on slideshow?
Yeah. Hold on a second. Give me 1 second. Slides. Let's try it again.
Oh, there it goes.
There we go.
There it goes.
It's there.
Okay. So do you see the whole bar now or just this? You see the whole bar of slides?
Yeah, I see the slides on the side too. Yes.
All right. So I'm going to keep it there for see if that helps.
Okay.
So as I said, I wanted to give you the optics so these young people could see these powerful Black men.
Right.
As Dr. Leonard Jeffries, this is about the age actually when I met Dr. J, and I'm pretty close to the age he was when I met him now. in the center is Baba Dr. Jack Felder. Dr. Jack Felder is one of the people that first started talking about the African roots of the Statue of Liberty and chemical biological warfare. And I'm trying to think of what other topics but he used to be out on 125th Street, right across from the Apollo Theater, every day, disseminating information via videos and 2 or 3 books that he made on his own. And his son Nova Felder is still out there doing the work. Dr. Jack Felder passed away some time ago, and so we also want to say Ibaye for his spirit, the peace be upon him. And then there's our Black Power General, bald-headed, beautiful brother, Minister Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. And as I said, Public Enemy quoted him in excerpted one of his speeches, and where he talked about we lost our names, we've lost our culture, we've lost our mores, our values, our way of life. And many of us, by the way we act, we've even lost our minds.
It's a fact.
So all of that going on, we see that using the pyramid analysis, and can you see that screen? You see that image?
Yes.
All of that going on. We see that there's the African root of who we are going up against the European world, and the synthesis is creating the African American. Now this next image. Brother Charles, Brother Asukile, why are you showing me a damn mouse in a mouse trap? Because this is an argument that I use or this is an imagery rather I use many times when I'm dealing with Black folks that are Republicans or conservatives and white folks in general. We are mice in the rat trap. They want to tell us that there are choices, that we have options, and we do have one choice that most of us are not really seriously ready to make. But when you look at the options, this mouse can go left or right, up or down, right? But he's still in a mouse trap. That mouse trap is the white system. It's white supremacy, it's racism, it's capitalism. Your options there are some options, but your options are limited by the system. Later on, we're going to come back with this imagery. But I want you to keep that visual, especially young people, because people will give you the illusion that you have choice, but you don't really have much of a choice. At least the ones that they present to you. You do have another choice, and we're going to come back to that. So all of this is to talk about socialization processes. So again, looking at these two socialization processes that are the popular ones. Now, I want to say here too that I didn't mention the rites of passage programs and other programs that are put together by Black nationalists and Pan-Africanists and people in the African traditional religious practices yet. Anyway, the two streams that I talk about fall into two categories for me. That aspiring to be wealthy elites from the middle class, that is W.E.B. Du Bois's talented tenth turned into a nightmare. It's grooming Black youth. Can you see the slide before I keep going?
Socialization process.
Right. It's grooming Black youth to pull them out of their communities and into whiteness. It's using educational tracking and standardizing tests to get the best and brightest out of our communities and pull them into the system where their skills and talent and genius can be used in a major way. They get these youth into these special programs, then they move them into prep schools, and then give them access via scholarships and etc. to elite colleges. Then when they graduate, they go on to be the HNIC, and y'all old school, so y'all know what HNIC is, right?
Right.
In these academic institutions, in the military, like a Colin Powell, and in the business world. They are trained to enrich the white system, even if it's at the expense of the Black world. So they'll be more capitalists than the capitalists are, because it's all about the green. It's all about getting more stocks. It's all about getting more shares. It's all about getting more cryptocurrency, when being African is so much more than that. Then there's the other end that I spoke of, which I call the end machine. This is where the masses of us fall in. They exploit and criminalize the rest of the impoverished and resource-lacking Africans in the world of their labor. Now, I want to make sure that we understand by what I'm saying about impoverished and resource-lacking. Impoverished meaning that they're kept poor materially, financially. They're actually not poor. They're actually richer than a lot of people. And I could tell you, having worked as an office manager, having worked as a facility manager, working right under CFOs and CEOs, those people that we think are living a high life because they're rich, they're usually miserable. Their children are miserable. But sometimes you could be poor, like I was poor, and I was in the ghetto flipping on a dirty mattress. And that was even though looking at it as an adult, I could see what it was, the rubble and everything around me. I was poor as hell. But still, in all of that poverty, there was some happiness. So impoverished is not just talking about resources, it's talking about spirit. And then resource lacking. Now, what I mean by resources don't just include material stuff. I also mean lack of information, because a lot of times, for instance, I have friends that have children that are taking advantage of programs and stuff that they don't necessarily have the funds of, because they don't know that this program has a scholarship for children that underserved communities. So a lot of times it's not just lack of the resources, it's lack of knowledge where to get the help to do what you want to do. I remember in my life, for instance, my mother, I wanted to go into Cub Scouts, and in the 70s when karate was the thing, I wanted to join karate class. But my mother took me there to find out what it required, but because of the funds, she couldn't follow up, and she didn't know where to, she didn't maybe think to ask. And so a lot of things that I could have done were kept from me because she didn't have the information to facilitate that. But anyway, that's to continue. The nigger machine exploits and criminalizes the rest of the African world. It exploits their bodies. It exploits their unrealized genius, or criminalizes their unrealized genius. I had a young brother that I grew up with. I'm not going to say his name, but he was 12 or 13 when I was maybe 17 or 16 or 18, because I'm a few years younger than I was one of the older brothers on my block. But he was in the drug gang, and he was a genius when it came to math, a genius. I have another friend Or I call him the Black MacGyver. He's a genius, but he's in the drug game. So we have a lot of unrealized geniuses in this world using their mental acuity for the underground economy. Let's just say that. School is used in the nigger machine to subdue the desires and the minds of our people, to keep them from even thinking. Boys in particular are trapped into special education and the drugs that come with that. Everybody is taught lies and the omitted history in school. As this happens, the music, the videos, the film, the art, the news broadcasts, and all of media bombard us with consumerism, promotion of drug use and sales, promotion of ratchet behavior, being a thug, being a thot. Indeed, they celebrate it. Lifetime Channel, all those channels, uh, Basketball Wives, Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, Love and Hip Hop New York. It's not celebrating the best of us. It's celebrating the pettiness between women. It's celebrating what was that? The guy that looked like a little cheesy rat. Him and his
Stevie J.
Stevie J and Jocelyn and his other lady fighting, and the two women fighting over him when they should be fighting him together, unified. That's the type of behavior that's being inculcated into our minds and celebrated. This type of behavior, and Puff Daddy. Now I'm gonna give you a disclaimer because I know Puff Daddy on the side that we don't know about was also working with Sister Soldier at one time with a not-for-profit. But what we see of Puff Daddy is the magnificent displays of wealth, him and Biggie. So even though he was doing some good with the not-for-profit, which did more for our community or did more for against our community? The image he put out across the world of crass materialism, or the not-for-profit work that he did behind the scenes that nobody knows about. And they don't celebrate him for the not-for-profit work he did on the low. They celebrate him for the crass materialism. Jay-Z, same thing, and so forth and so on. But anyway, the nigger machine benefits the machine by destroying black minds to where we are incapable of utilizing our time, talent, and labor to improve our community. In fact, not only does it make us incapable of doing it, it makes it inconceivable in our minds that we are geniuses and that we have the capability to do what we need done.
You're right. That is so right. You know what? You know what? I'm gonna save it because you hit some stuff. I don't even like to watch those shows because I feel like it's really degrading our people. But I save that for later.
Okay. So you see the next slide within America. You see the
socialization process. What are the popular socialization processes under Europeans continued?
Yeah, there you go. I just want to make sure y'all see it. So so let me back up a little bit. So this socialization process that I was talking about is not just taking place in America, and in a large part of it, because the niggerization is also taking place in Jamaica. The niggerization and or the black elite stream is also taking place in Jamaica. It's also taking place in Trinidad. It's also taking place in Barbados. It's also taking place in Haiti and in London, in Accra, Ghana, and Lagos, Nigeria. I watched the TV show briefly of Nigerians. Nigeria has oil money. The Nigerians that are wealthy, they're taking their money not to the country to build up the country. They're taking their money and buying houses in New York, buying houses in Washington, D.C., buying houses in L.A., buying houses in London. So those are the elites. Whereas on the streets now, they're kidnapping people. Remember, we just had the thing with the Nigerian uniform. I don't know if they were police or military brats, SARS. What was that about? SARS was stopping people that looked like they had, that if you had a nice cell phone or you dressed, looked like you had some money. SARS was kidnapping people, beating people up, forcing people to give them bribes. In the Caribbean, when I was a child, it was inconceivable, except maybe in Jamaica, where there was the contention between the PNP in the JLP, the Jamaica Labour Party, and the People's National Party, I think is PNP. Those two were fighting sponsored by the CIA. It was inconceivable in Trinidad and other places that you could be kidnapped. But that is the reality in the Caribbean now. People are being kidnapped if they look like they have money. And that's, I mean, you could say part of it is because of the CIA and the other programs, no doubt. But that image that Americans have put out, or African Americans have helped our enemies put out across the world to promote thuggery, is a major contributor to that. What's going on in the Caribbean now and in Africa now, in terms of our young people and their love of material and thuggishness. So anyway, back to America. In America, particularly, the second process of niggerization creates jobs managing, criminalizing, and treating the pathologies of the Black community for poor and middle-class people of European descent that were disgruntled because they had few job opportunities after outsourcing of which started in the 70s and expanded in the 80s and 90s. You know, you remember everything used to say made in Taiwan. Now everything says made in China. Some places you go, Old Navy, you see stuff made in the Dominican Republic. And there's no jobs. All those jobs, sewing and even the car parts. The cars might be put together here, but then the parts are made in China and Japan. So the jobs that they created using us, criminalized us, us not seeing our value, are jobs that include social workers, lawyers in the criminal justice system, judges in the justice system, psychologists and psychiatrists in the schools and the family courts, pharmacists. The pharmaceutical industry is getting paid off of Ritalin and Adderall and all of the different drugs that they give our young people in the public school system once they're labeled special ed. It creates jobs for more police. It creates jobs for corrections officers. Creates jobs for parole officers. It creates jobs for salesmen who sell the goods that are made by convicts in these private for-profit prisons. And it creates money and jobs and opportunities for finance people and stockbrokers as they sell stocks in Corecraft and North Face, or the company that owns North Face, because I'm sure North Face is just a brand, and I'm sure there's a larger company like Federated owns Macy's and Lord and Taylor and other. I'm sure there's a larger company over North Face that is the major brand, a major owner. So it creates jobs, this socialization process that's against us and helping European descended peoples. The second process also uses other methods that I'm going to mention briefly. It uses feminism. I think I spoke the other day and I said, because of feminism, Black women and other women started leaving the house. My generation is the generation of the latchkey kids. Are y'all familiar with that term?
Yes, those are the children that was left in the house while their parents was at work.
Right, and we had they put a key on a shoelace or some kind of string, and we would call latchkey kids because when we went to school or if we left at home, they put that around our neck, and for us to be able to get in the house once we came back from school and we were by ourselves.
I was one of those. I've been doing that.
That's what they call latchkey kids back in the 70s and 80s.
Wow.
Feminism and the movement. See, and it's funny because I just was last week watching a video, and a woman that was a staunch feminist at one time, she said she wrote for Cosmopolitan magazine, and she said that she unwittingly helped to derail feminism from what it was supposed to be. Feminism was supposed to be about women having equal rights to vote and to work, to own property, because prior to feminism, or prior to women getting any rights, their husbands had all the rights. If they had property, even if they inherited property, their husband controlled the property. There was what we would call in social work, I learned something about financial abuse, which is you controlling the resources of a person and holding that control over them to do whatever you want to do. That's financial abuse. Women were suffering this for hundreds of thousands of years in European systems. And so as women left the house, let me back up. So what this person was saying is that somehow it went from a righteous movement for women's rights to have resources, to be able to vote in America, to women have the right to do whatever with their bodies, whatever the hell they want to do with their bodies. If they want to kill a fetus that they had the sense to lay down with a guy with, but not a sense enough to wear protection, in either of them, and I'm not going to give the men any excuses in that. That the man had no say now in the relationship in terms of if his child was going to be born or not. The creation of abortion clinic. And so she was upset when she realized what she did and derailing feminism from what it was supposed to be to being about free love and irresponsible sexual behavior. And she regretted being a part of that derailing of feminism. So I'm not going to say that feminism is bad by no means, but I would say for any black woman listening, I would encourage you to look into womanism. Woman, the M instead of M-E-N is M-Y-N, because that is black women saying that we face a dual oppression, the system's oppression, and then because black men have this European value system where the so-called man is supposed to be the head of the house alone without a complementary of the female or the mother, they're being doubly oppressed. So I would say to any sisters, can you still hear me? You're
Yes.
still with me? Okay. I would say to any sister, I'm not going to beat up feminism per se, but I'm going to say for sisters that look into some of the critical writings on womenism as a guide for yourselves as black women, because there's a dual oppression, but there's also something between the black man and the black woman and facing the oppression of the larger system that's more important for the black man and black woman to get back together and regain their African self than for her to be fighting me or fighting us as men. So I'm going to leave that at that. But anyway, other methods included under feminism is the abortion clinics. And under feminism, the home structure and the protection of the mother being home at all times to supervise and guide the children, even if the father is not there, was gone. Under feminism, women began to move around the world for work. Now they can go into any college. Now they could go anywhere they want to for work, quote unquote, unchaperoned. But what it really is the woman is leaving. Every woman that I know that's successful has a support system around her. It includes her immediate blood family. It includes her, sister friends and stuff around her. But if women are moving away from where they grew up or away from where their support system is, now they're alone. And you see that I have single mothers and now truly single mothers, because my mother was married and then they divorced. She was a single mother. But my mother still had my uncle Mansour, my grandmother Beatrice, my adopted grandfather Freddie, we called him Freddie, and then my actual maternal biological grandfather John, and other folks around her. So even though she was single, she was not alone. Unfortunately, now today I can say that I know more sisters that are single mothers that are truly alone than ever before. Outsourcing. The manufacturing jobs that blacks relied on for income and stability during and after World War II. I say during because during World War II, a lot of the white males in the community were drafted into service. So positions opened up for white women to work, positions opened up for black men and women to work. And then after World War II, America was the only country that was left standing with the infrastructure because Europe had been devastated. Japan had been devastated by the bomb. Japan wasn't even really. Japan was considered a power to some degree because of their fleet, their navy. But Japan, even though it's a small thing, it had a powerful background, and it has its base in Shintoism and things that kept it solid. But once it was devastated by the nuclear bomb, and then because it had fought against the Allies, Japan had to renegotiate its place in the world. So After World War II, because America was the only country left with a serious standing infrastructure, it was able to prosper because everybody else whose infrastructure was devastated was buying from America. So there was the cars in Detroit and everything. There was this major expansion in profit, and black folks were able to profit from that. Right, but with outsourcing now, all of the major manufacturing jobs leave America. They go to Taiwan was one of the initial places. They go to Asia, and they go to Mexico and some other places where they could uh, take advantage of the cheap labor. Other other methods used in this process is the social services system, welfare. I think I mentioned it the other day. Those of us who are old enough remember the movie Claudine. Y'all remember that, right? There's a
Yeah,
scene.
I think that was before my time. I don't think I caught that one.
Oh, you got to catch that one, my brother. Diane Carroll and James Earl Jones. But Diane Carroll is a single mother. James Earl Jones is the guy that's dating her. He's scared. He loves her, and they do get married in the movie. That's a spoiler, but it's a movie worth seeing. But there's a scene in the movie before he marries her where the social worker is coming for an inspection, and social workers could pop up at any time. And they've been doing this since Malcolm X time. If you read the autobiography, they used to pop up without calling or letting his mother know that they were coming. And they would scrutinize everything you had in the house to see if maybe you were getting too much money, or was there a man in the house. If there's a man in the house, then we could cut you off welfare because the man is supposed to be working. So there was this constant attack by the social services system to keep the black woman single. Then later on in the 70s and 80s, children have rights. You cannot beat your child. Somebody was talking about that the other day. Sister, I remember your comments on it the other day. Children have rights. You cannot beat your children. You can't. You can't enforce the law of the land in your house anymore. Attacked by the social service laws. And I should add the family courts. Drugs in the criminal justice system. So we need to understand that there was an ongoing. It didn't just start with the 70s and 80s. There's always been an attack on black folks using the criminal justice system. The drug part came later for us, but they used drugs against other people. In China, they used opium against the Chinese. And I think that was 1800s. The British they flooded uh, China with opium, and then with opium dens all over the place. We still see them sometimes in some of the martial arts films with Jet Li and folks. And so, people become addicted to opium. That was great people in the martial arts flicks, and then they have to try to bring them back to themselves. In the movies, they do, but in reality, hundreds of possibly thousands of Chinese were devastated by opium. In fact, it was so bad that the Chinese fought back and had opium wars. But for us, drugs come later. So there was the black codes before black folks were devalued as human beings under slavery. There was free blacks, but the black code started coming into effect because white women started marrying black men. They started choosing. Now, if you know history, when these white men were taking these voyages around the world, there were no women on the ships. So they would go to wherever land that they were going to, and when they got there, after being on the boat for months, they would take advantage of the indigenous population's women, and that's how we have a lot of the so-called mulatto and mixed race folks now. But when they finally set up the colonies and they started sending women over, a lot of the times here the women were choosing black men instead of white men, and the white men became outraged, and so they started laws against miscegenation. In fact, Jacqueline Badaloria did an interview with the brothers that produced a film called Happy, HAPI, and in her interview she talks about what was the punishment for white women marrying or having children with black men in those times, and I believe this is the 17 to 1800s. I'm not sure the exact date. You have to excuse me. The white women, if they married or had a child with the black man, their children would become slaves or enslaved, and the white woman herself could become enslaved or indentured for marrying a black man or having a child with a black man. And these are the type. This is when they really started to discriminate. That combined with, I believe it was Bacon's Rebellion, with black folks and white folks under Bacon, Thomas Bacon resisted. They fought against the ruling elites. So the ruling elites looked at this and said, "Oh no, we can't have these black folks working with the poor white folks." So they devised a way to separate poor black folks and poor white folks from working together for their betterment against the elites. So the black codes and other codes started. Then after the Civil War, when blacks are so-called free under Reconstruction and moving into Jim Crow, they began something called convict leasing. And I thank Brother Mark McPhee for reminding me of the name of that. So black folks are kicked off or leave the plantations without a job, without any money in their pocket, without any clothes. And a lot of them have nowhere to go. So they created vagrancy laws. And under the vagrancy laws, they could penalize black men for being without. And mind you, I want to say this too. To understand white people and what they do to us, we really have to understand what they've done to each other. This is why Dr. Clark used to tell us that if we want to understand racism and white supremacy, study white history of themselves. Whites have been doing this to themselves for thousands of years. You hear what I'm saying? Whites have been doing this to themselves for thousands of years.
That's the feudalism, correct?
That's feudalism. That's the right to first night, which will give the lord who owned the land right to sleep with a peasant's wife on the first night of marriage, your honeymoon night. Can you imagine that? The lord of the land had the right to sleep with your wife before you did.
Ain't that something? Wow.
So that's what some of these cult leaders been doing out here too.
No doubt, no doubt. But again, they we don't understand why they would put our poor people who was formerly enslaved, why they would do that to them. But they did that to their people in England. They had workhouses in England for the poor and the vagrants. So in their minds, if they could do it to themselves, then hell yeah, they'll do it to us.
Right. So in other words, what they learn is a behavior, and they just brought it over here because this is something they learned.
It's beyond the behavior. It's the culture. It's the culture of I have to fight to acquire the most material I can, because everybody, just like capitalism, everybody is aspiring to be a Bill Gates. In Europe, everybody probably in the 1500s, 1700s, people were aspiring to be a duke or earl or lord. In fact, though, a lot of the people that were the key movers of the trades they were knighted. They were knighted, or they were granted some titles where they might have just been a merchant. Merchants didn't have any titles. They didn't own any land, but they were allowed to do trade. Then you have poor people. Some places they called them serfs, and other places they called them peasants. Right? Some people got so wealthy off of buying corporate stocks and the ventures out into the world and colonization. They actually were granted knighthood or granted earlships or lordships and dukeships, and with that comes actual ownership of land, not just having a store or something. You actually own the land now. So they fought against each other then, and now the fight is on a more esoteric level, because most of the finance is stuff on paper or stuff on the computer. Is not even based on gold, as we know. And American currency being the chief currency the world operates on, but they operate like that against themselves, is my point. So we should not be surprised that they do it to us.
I
So
have a question.
convict leasing. Go ahead, brother.
So I know you speaking about the feudalism that was in Europe, but like right now I'm reading a book on Queen Anne and Zinga, and
Mm-hmm.
it talks about like her line of royalty, and how her line of royalty they did a lot of I don't want to say unsavory things to the people that was in that kingdom as well. Is there parallel mistreatment under royalty within the African continent?
Not to the degree that like they were bad. I'm not going to say there's no bad people. Everybody has a potential for good and evil things with in their conduct and actions. So I'm not going to be a person that's going to tell you a lie. We all were kings and queens. We all got along. Everything was hunky dory. I'm not going to be that person. If I don't have any biological children, but any child I talk to, or I talk to them straight, or I try to talk to them as straight as I can for their intellectual capabilities. I'm not going to be idolizing black folks.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that did bad things. It's like there was people that did good things. There's somebody tip on the east coast of Africa that was majorly involved in slavery, right? There was folks here that bought, there's a book, Black Slave Masters. Now, some of the people who bought slaves to freedom, these are people in their family and stuff, they bought them out of slavery. But I've no doubt that there's some niggas that were buying slaves thinking that they was as white as the white man and mistreat them just like they mistreat, just like white people would mistreat us. So I have no doubt in my mind that there was some people doing that. A lot of people bought themselves out of slavery and bought their families and other friends and stuff out of slavery. But there was some, hopefully very few, I don't have all the numbers, that was just as white-minded as the white man and mistreating them and thinking that they're elite and whatever, just like they are some black folks now that don't see me as a brother, that see me as a peasant or whatever you want to say it. You know? So I'm not going to idolize any of our thing. I'm going to come real with it. However, I will say that in Africa, there are systems in place. For instance, in the Khan, though there might be royal families in the Khan, there's a structure to choosing the chief. There's a structure to choosing the paramount chiefs. There's a structure to choosing the king of the Ashanti, the Ashantihini. The king just can't be the king just because he's part of the royal family. The king has to be worthy. And there's a process with the council of elders and the queen mother and the spiritual council with the ancestors and the spirits, what we call the Abosun, that takes place before somebody can be chosen to assume a chieftaincy or a paramount chieftaincy or indeed be the Shantahini. You just can't say, oh, I'm of royal blood, I just got it like that, I'm going to be that. No. And it's not because of political intrigue like in Europe where people kill their brothers so that they could take the throne. Now systems are different across Africa, so I don't know the particular system of in Zinga's line, but I know in general when you look at African culture, there are systems in place that deal with the divine, deal with the practical, deal with the mental, the political, and all of that other stuff. So I can't speak to any particular wrongdoings, but I would say in Africa, at least, in African culture, there are stopgaps. And when people abuse their power, there are stopgaps to send them back to the ancestors if they mistreat the people. I don't know this particular situation you're talking about, but I know what should have happened is they should have been sent back to their ancestors for what I say, send back for recycling or reprocessing.
That's right.
So you had any other question, brother, before I go on?
No, go
Or
ahead.
sister? Sister, you have any question?
I'm taking it all in.
All right. Are there any questions in the chat? I can't see the chat in this mode.
Not right now.
Okay. All right. So to continue, this convict leasing, Nixon's war on drugs, which used heroin and PC. We talked about this the other day, Sunday, when my elder brother Michael was mentioning heroin. Nixon used drugs to quash black power, but also to quash an emerging white power in this SDS. I forgot what SDS is. I think it's Student Democratic Society, the Weather Underground, those type of things. He flooded drugs into colleges. He another program they did was MK Ultra. MK Ultra and experiment with LSD and these psychotic drugs, psychedelic drugs, and free love. So Dr. Jeffries likes to talk about. Dr. Jeffries has something he calls sex, super exploitation of the X factor. So they use, in other words, these are things that they use to try to buy you or try to preoccupy your mind. So that's uh, sex itself. That's white women for Black Power movement, or exotic women for maybe white guy that wants to try an exotic thing. Um, that's fame. That's popularity. So free love was used. The free love movement of the 70s and the 60s was about preoccupation and quelling the conscious rising against that was happening with black students. Black students and the black community are the ones that made black studies and Africana studies and all these things possible. Once they got access to schools like City College, they demanded black studies programs, right? So we got to get rid of that kind of conscious activity. Let's flood the community with drugs. Let's promote drug use. Let's promote reckless sex. These are the things that was used. Then Reagan, and not only that, they also made more guns available. And then there's COINTELPRO and all these other things that are targeting the black community. Then Reagan comes in 80 with his war on drugs. And that's basically bringing in the crack era.
Mm.
And not only was Reagan talking about a war on drugs, while they was giving the CIA was giving Free Ray Ricky Ross drugs, cocaine, and enabling him to make it into crack and flood California and expand it out across America. They were also bringing in guns and drugs. Now I have a friend that I grew up with, moved down south to North Carolina, and I don't know if he ever had conservative aspirations before, but since he's been down south, he's become. This is a black guy. He's become staunchly conservative, which I don't mind to a degree because I know black folks are really conservative in their values. Really, when you look at it, we believe in home, we believe in working hard, and we believe in God, and all those are conservative values. So that's to be Republican. Most of us, most black folks in America, were Republican prior to Frederick Delano Roosevelt. So that's not a big shock to me. But anyway, the friend I told him years ago that the black community was flooded with guns. I told him that they used to bring guns in the community in certain places, like I think Oakland. They brought guns. You know how you have a block, and it might be, you know how some blocks have like an alley between both sides, like the north and the south, like there's a middle block where trucks might come in and unload to the back of a store or something like that. But there's an alley. But they would bring guns, excuse me, crates of guns, and just drop them in alleys in the black neighborhood. And then I told them in Chicago, there's a train depot where the trains will come in with ammunitions, and they will park the things there with no security, with no electrified fence, knowing that guys was going to go into there and get the guns and bring them into the black community. I told him this years ago. He called me a month or two ago and said, Chuck, I have to apologize. You were absolutely right. And guess who told him? A white guy from Chicago told him that is absolutely right. They will bring the trains and leave the caboose where the ammunition and the guns and stuff was in the same spot all the time, in the spot where there's not roving security, there's no security cameras, no electrified fence. And that's how Chicago got to be what it is. So at the same time,
what's
yeah,
crazy about that is that they wasn't even worried about anybody rising up against the government. They knew they was
no,
gonna take that stuff and go right and kill each other.
Nope, because that's what the programming was. The programming is that niggerization programming. But at the same time, there was a war on drugs and drugs and guns being coming into America. Reagan, who was supposedly having a war on drugs and drugs coming into America, his CIA is actually the CIA that is funding and facilitating drug growing, so it could get black funds to do its operations around the world. Because as you remember, or if you don't know, America was in an ideological and political and economic war with the world that was under communism and socialism, which is symbolized by Russia and to a lesser degree back then China. So America was trying to keep Russia and Russian interests from supporting anything in this hemisphere. And this hemisphere means the Caribbean, Central, and South America. Under the Monroe Doctrine and the Wilson Doctrine, there's a two bastard presidents that said that anything on this side of the Atlantic is in America's interest, and anybody from the west, from the other parts of the Western world that are coming in here that don't have the type of agreement with us will be considered enemies. But also the black folks that are living in these areas that are trying to free to take the yokes of slavery and poverty off themselves will be oppressed. So Michael Manley in Jamaica, who else was down there? Maurice Bishop is assassinated. Michael Manley is killed. Noriega was with their program, but when he started going against their program, they went after him, and so forth and so on. So they make sure that everything on this side is under America's purview some way or another. So they use the growing of drugs to fund activities and rebels to squash any government that was more allied with Russia than America, or any government that was trying to be a black government, or at least an indigenous government not controlled by America, so that America could continue to exploit places where they're growing bananas, like Dole bananas is in the Caribbean or Central South America. The tourism industry. At one time, Cuba was under America, and the mob, like you have Las Vegas. Before there was Las Vegas, there was Cuba. Cuba was the white white America's playground, where the rich and wealthy could go and be decadent. And then Castro comes along and says that we're going to stop that. Batista and all the people that America had in its pocket that enabled that type of behavior was pushed out. That's why they're so against Cuba, aside from it being so close to in proximity to America, that could be a staging base for Russia to come in if Russia wanted to stage a war. They were against it because the black and indigenous folks of Cuba were saying that we're not going to be your decadent playground anymore for you to do what you want to do with us and our people and our land. And they never forgiven him for that. And every chance they get, you get somebody in like Trump. Obama took the sanctions off, which was trying to move past that time. Trump comes back in and reinstates all of that and shuts access to Cuba back down again. But it's about controlling land, labor, and resources. And even if they even think that you be in a position where you could challenge them in a competitive way, they begin the process to shut you down. So anyway, we're going back to Rockefeller drug laws and mandatory sentences. 3 strikes you're out in California. At the same time that's happening, where there's mandatory sentences given nonviolent offenders for marijuana and minor crack possession, with 25 years, 10 years, 15 years mandatory. The judge has no discretion to say, okay, you've never been in trouble before. You don't have anything on your record exhibiting violence or whatever. You're just a young dumb guy that made a mistake. I'll give you 2 years. The judge now has no choice. The judge has to give you whatever the mandatory is, and by the time you're out, you're a grown man didn't finish school for many, unless they took advantage of high school and college programs while they were locked up. You're a young man. You're a young adult now. You might have been a teenager when you went in. You're a young adult now that has no skills, that's lacking in what they used to call social graces, meaning you don't know how to interact with society. I know there's brothers that was locked up under Rockefeller drug laws that got out and never even seen a cell phone. They had to be totally reaccultured to life outside of prison. The private prison industry, private corporations creating prisons. Not only are they creating prisons, they're entering into agreements with states and local prison authorities, whereas they have to have a certain contractually, they have to have a mandatory level of attendance. You hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
80, 90% of the rooms must not rooms. I'm searching for the word, brother. Help me out. Not the cells.
Oh,
Mm.
90, 80, 80 something to 90% of the cells must be filled by the state or the local authorities, or you will have to pay my corporation X amount of money if you don't fill it. So now the state and the local authorities have to provide prisoners to fill up the prisons they've entered into contractual agreements with. You hear what I'm saying?
I hear you.
absolutely.
Wow.
You still on the same socialization process slide, correct?
Yes, the one that says feminism outsourcing and such.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
the current drug explosion to continue it. It's a continued assault, has been since we were in slavery, and is continuing. Current drug explosion that we know, promotion of meth, molly, codeine, sip and serve, and all that other stuff that I'm happy I don't know about because I might go crazy watching our young people destroy themselves.
Right.
Both socialization processes create black males who are stuck in perpetual boyhood, who are unsuitable to be husbands or fathers or community leaders or business owners or doctors and so on that we need. Both processes guide our young males like missiles to attack and exploit black women when they should be protecting them. Both processes also create black women that are unsuitable to be wives, mothers, community leaders, and all the other things I mentioned. Although they have more success in the world, meaning they could get jobs more easily, they graduate in high school in larger numbers, they graduate with bachelors and higher level degrees. They are becoming defeminized by the constant attack of white supremacy, racism, and black men. They are seen as hard to communicate with and labeled angry black women because they have created an internal defense mechanism of talking loud or forcibly. And this is a lot of times even unconscious to them how loud they're actually being or how aggressive they're being. And this is to protect them because they've been under constant assault. They've been raped. They've been molested by family members. They've been abused. As we just seen and we were talking about on Sunday, young men feel like they could touch them when they don't want to be touched.
Right.
The young men are getting angry when they don't want to talk to them. Well, and I had to say this to my brother one time. We don't understand what it's like to be a woman. Can you imagine if you're a good-looking woman? Every man, almost every man a good-looking woman passes is trying to holler at her. So that even when you just say, like I walk past, I say, "How you doing, sister?" They don't know where I'm coming from because they're not used to that anymore. When my grandmother raised me to say hi to people. That's that southern thing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when you come, especially if it's a neighbor or something, even if you don't know their name, if you see them like every day, if you know they're a neighbor in your building or down the block or whatever, you say hi.
Right.
If I say hi to a lot of sisters because so many brothers might come in with that and then be like, "Hey girl, let me holler at you a minute. Come on, sweet thing," whatever it is, cat calling, all of that stuff. We don't understand what it's like to be a woman and constantly under uh, assault. So that even if a man looks at you now and he's a good dude and he's thinking about talking to you, and this is not just black women either, it's just exacerbated in black women's case. This is all women. Now it used to be when I was 20 that you might find a wife by somebody that you went to school with, somebody that you worked with, somebody that you was in a social organization of some type with. Now you can't talk to women in school or at work, or it's called sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Because so many men have abused that access and tried to denigrate women. They don't know, they can't, because they already, as I said, they already lack in social graces, especially this generation. You can't, they don't have discernment whether or not a man is approaching them with good intentions or just want some skins, as we used to say in the 90s. So that it's a defense mechanism is basically what I'm saying. Ultimately, both processes, the process of trying to be elite through the middle class values, or the process of trying to attain elite status through um, the nigger machine, both processes serve the goal of attacking, minimizing, and eventually destroying the African family and the African race.
Wow.
So our struggle isn't just about Africans being able to compete with Europeans, being able to be self-determined, or even about being in control of Africa's resources. It's about restoring a system of Ma'at family. Ma'at, reciprocity, harmony, balance, complementarity, righteousness. It's about becoming fully human and humane. It's about becoming, knowing who we are again, reclaiming our values and our connection to the universe as the parents of the human race. When I said primary earlier, we are the parents of the human race. Now, can you picture in your household the children running the household and the parents sitting to the side and being told what to do by the children?
Yeah, household gonna be a wreck.
Well, humanity is our household. The earth at least is our household. We are the parents on this earth, but we're acting like the children. We want to be the children's friends. Now, I know y'all can relate to that because some of your friends have children and they try to be your children's friend instead of their parent. We're trying to be the friend or get the child to like us. That's our child that went through some trauma in the Ice Age experience or whatever experience that made them the way that they are. And instead of us taking control again and remembering who we are as the parents, we trying to stoop down to their childhood level, their childlike level. And we need to change that. So now the discussion goes to who we were and what did we do. So there's some African thoughts on the universe and our connection to it that I want to share with you. First thing, as I said earlier, in terms of material usage and our interaction with each other is based on our value of the spirit world over the material world, meaning we are each connected as human beings, but we're also connected to the rest of creation. But more than that, we are God having a human experience, as Brother Small said. So as God having a human experience, do we act godly or do we act like beasts with no brains, without realization of that connection? So if we say that we're God's children, then everything we do as God's children is about keeping creation in existence, keeping it moving smoothly, right? And that's not what capitalism is about. Capitalism is about exploiting everything and using everything up as immediately as you can to get as much profit as you can. And that's not godlike.
That's right.
So we have to understand that there's more to existence than what we can see. Meaning the immaterial world is much larger than what we can see with our eyes, or the world, because there's an immaterial world, a world that we can't see where there's other things going on, and there's the world that we can't see. But if I had to explain it to somebody, it's like an iceberg. When you see an iceberg floating in the ocean, you think that, my damn, that's big. But if you saw what was under the water, you would be much more impressed. There's more of the iceberg below water than there is above water. Y'all with me?
With you.
Yes.
So that in that sense, that's what I'm trying to say about the world. There is much more on the side that we can't see than there is in this world of limited vision that we can see. And I said there's no separation between God, the creator, and the creation of which we're a part. That the universe is centered around harmonious operation and coexistence of all types of life, human life, regular or other animals, the plant life, and the mineral life. In fact, I'm in the Lukumi tradition, which is Yoruba through Cuba. In the Lukumi tradition, we talk and in Yoruba in general, we talk about Ashe. Ashe is the energy that is in all things, and whether it's humans or it's plant or a rock, there's Ashe in everything. The African understanding also lets us know that all life is sacred. It also tells us, as human beings, we are just temporary caretakers of the material world, only so for future generations, right? So there's been said that, for instance, in the Native American, think 10 generations ahead. Well, the African tradition is much in the same way. You're not just thinking what's best for you, you're thinking what's best for future generations. To expand on the African worldview, I would like to use there's a organizational psychologist and a great thinker called Dr. Edward Nichols. He broke down the difference in thinking between Europeans, Asians, and Africans. Europeans think, I think, therefore I am. Notice the I. It's all about individualism. It's all about my existence. The Asians think I am because we are, meaning I exist for the benefit of the group. And the group is more important than my personal self. The African, however, the African thinks I am because we are. And we are because I am.
That's
You
right.
see the difference?
Wow, that's
The
deep.
group is valued, but I'm valued too.
That's
And
right.
then I can't exist without the group, but the group cannot exist without me. I'm just as important as everybody else, and everybody else is important as me. And that's what you last Sunday, Ubuntu. That's what that's about. It's we're connected in this. We all have to live or die together to make this thing work for it to be really successful. Not a competition. It's not just about you. It's not just about you want a Beamer or a Bentley. It's about us. You want a Beamer or a Bentley so bad that you're willing to destroy mothers, that you're willing to destroy your own mother to sell crack to her. You want a pair. Well, back in the days, it was felines and English, British Knights and British Walkers and Gazelles. But you want that so much that you're willing to sell crack to little kids, that you're willing to sell crack to your best friend's mother? Is that what you want? Sex so bad that you're willing to take advantage of somebody who is strung out on drugs? That's the value system that we have to forget and get back to our African value system. I am because we are, and we are because I am. The African understanding also lets us know to be human is to be part of several realities and groups. The universe, meaning you're part of God and God's creation. You are yourself, your personal self. You are connected to your family, your biological family, but also, like in a case like mine, I'm in a Lukumi. I have a godmother, Daria, I love to death. That's my spiritual bloodline. In the African traditional religions, people, that's the thing. So when you become an initiate or you begin to go, have a Baba Lorisha or Mama Lorisha, Baba Lao, or whatever it's called in the other traditions, when you begin to consult with them and seek deeper knowledge of African spiritual traditions, you become part of their house, right? You become part of a spiritual bloodline that goes back. For the Akan, that spiritual bloodline might go back to Nana Dinazulu, who was one of the first people to bring back the African traditional religions to America, right? It might go to other people. All the names that I do not know in the Yoruba tradition, it might go back. to someone else that was one of the first people to go back to Yoruba land and get that tradition, or they might go back to Cuba because like Yoruba, as I said, comes through Cuba, and some people got initiated into your Ifa or Lukumi or different things through Cuba. It might go back to Brazil and then back to Africa from Brazil, back to Africa from Cuba. But all of those people in the line of the house who's trained, the trainers of 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 the priests, that's the spiritual bloodline.
That's
It
like
might go
Babalao. That's what they consider a Babalao, right?
well. In Yoruba, there's Babalaos. Babalaos have a uh, specific role, and Babalaos can only do specific things in terms of divination, meaning giving people readings, right? And then Babalaos are specialized in what they do too. Some might deal with a particular aspect versus another. And same thing with the regular priests. They're Babalaos, and then there's some other types of priests. We call those Baba meaning father, Baba Lorishas, and Iya meaning mother, Iya Lorishas. So they are priests that a woman will be crowned as an Iya Lorisha, and a male might be crowned as a Baba Lorisha. And then Babalaos is separate. What Babalaos do and what Baba Lorishas, Iya Lorishas do is different. They work together many times, but they do different. They do readings for people different. Their work is different in spiritual realm, or for people in dealing with the spiritual realm. Their works are different. And there are also other folks that are, to my knowledge, I'm not an initiated priest, so I can't speak on what they did. And if I was an initiated priest, I would have to ask for permission from the community in order to be able to share certain secrets, because that's another tradition of African people. People have to prove that they are worthy and committed to learn certain level of knowledge. Because when you give a certain level of knowledge to irresponsible people or immature people, they're going to use it immaturely.
Hmm. I read that Ayanla was a
She is.
tradition. Yeah.
She, I know. She is. She's initiated.
Hmm.
Uh, so, as I said, universal, personal, family. Then clan. Clan groups is just nothing but a group of families that have agreed to work, to live and cooperate together. Then there are larger. I called it clan collectives. That there might be some sociological or anthropological term that's better suited, but for my sake, I call it clan collectives, which is your family. Then there's clans, which is groups of families. Then what I call clan collectives, which is groups of clans, and that might be an ethnic group. Like the Ashanti is not just one family. The Ashanti is a group of different ethnic groups that have agreed to work together, or closely related ethnic groups. Then there's and then nation groups, ethnic groups rather, our tribes band together into nations or into nation states. Groups of clans working together. Before I proceed, I want to pay homage to, aside from the living folks like Dr. Jeffries and Brother Smalls and my eldest sons of Africa, this man right here is the man that began. I wouldn't even been going to WBAI or WLIB radio to listen to Gary Bird if that wasn't for this man right here, Malcolm X. Can you see that in this family?
I love that image right there.
Yes.
But this is Malcolm trying to teach what it means to be a man to the men. And while he was teaching the men, there was somebody else in MGT training, the Muslim girls training, teaching women how to be women. You see, Malcolm taught that a man equals husband, father. Man equals protector and provider. Man equals controller and elevator of the black woman. Man equals authority, equals head. Now, authority. Authority is not power. Authority is you have power that's granted to you by those who you are governing or those that you are leading. And authority is a power that can be given and taken away versus broad naked power. See, the white man gives you a veneer of authority, but what he really utilizes is raw power, violence against us. But Malcolm taught that to be authority does not mean that you are beating up your wife and physically putting fear of God into. To be a man means that you could do all of these things, and your wife trusts you enough to let you be the one out in front, the head of the family. And
Mm.
ultimately, when you master all these things under the Nation of Islam, it lifted you up to godliness.
That's right. That's right.
So, what was the correlation now? Now, the Nation of Islam is a 20th century construct, but what was the African construct? In traditional African societies, in order to be prepared to handle roles, responsibilities, and privileges, which included fulfilling your personal mission or lesson that you came into this life to fulfill. Because depending on which African tradition you believe in, Africans believe that you come back into the world. Well, some believe that you are actually your grandparents or your great grandparents remanifested in the physical form. But each of us comes into this world to either learn something or to fulfill a particular mission. And Africans go through several rites of passage to teach the responsibilities and wisdom of the ancestors and how to handle our roles and how to fulfill our mission. So one of the first rites of passage that we have is the birth rite. After birth, there's a naming ceremony to give a meaningful, protective, or strengthening name to the child that will enable him or her to survive and fulfill his mission. So what do I mean? So if it's been divine, let's say, that this child is coming into the world to become an architect, or this child is coming to be a leader of Black folks, or this child is coming into the world with a special gift of insight to share with other people. The child is giving birth. Now, the elders, the mother and the father, they sit and observe the child for a while to see what the child is about, because children are born with personalities. They don't, a lot of times I used to think that we shape their personality. No, those little suckers are born with their own personality right from the start. And those of you that are parents know that what I'm talking about. I've observed they have their own personalities from the start. It's our job to discern what their personality is, what problems or what strengths or weaknesses they have. And when you give a child a name means something. A
Mm.
name in the African tradition is not just some made up crap. A name, you don't name a child Moet. You don't name a child Portia. You don't name a child Bentley because that's the name of some cracker's product. You give a child a name that's going to strengthen characteristics within them. You even African children sometimes have many names. I was given the name Quao or Yao, a child born on Thursday, because I was a child born on Thursday. So you might have a name related to the day you was born on. You might have a name. My godson was named after Sundiata. Sundiata, and when he was young, when he was a baby, he was weak. They named him Sundiata because Sundiata was a king who was born sickly, but was nurtured and given whatever herbs and medicine and stuff, and they built up his physique till he became one of the most powerful warrior kings in West Africa. So when they named my godson Sundiata, it was to bring that energy to him, to strengthen him. That's what we give names for. We don't make up names. We don't take a combination of mommy's name and daddy's name that don't mean nothing and make up a name to give to our children.
Pardon, sir.
That's
Who did you say Sundiata was again?
Sundiata was, I believe, in Mali. I believe
Right.
it's Mali or Sundiata,
He's founder. The founder
Songhai,
of Alli.
Mali or Songhai.
Yeah.
He was one of their greatest kings,
Yeah.
Sundiata.
I have that book.
But Sundiata was weak when he was born, and so the community, the parents, the doctor, the herbologists, or whatever, they built him up to where he became a man. He was one of the strongest warrior kings they ever had in their empire. That's what a name does for African people. And white folks even have this. My given name is Charles. I was named after my grandfather, and my father also is the junior. I'm the third. But Charles has a root in the German word Karl, the German name rather, Karl. Karl means man. So even though we could critique a lot of their behavior, even to some degree, they had an understanding that names are given to bring meaning to a child's life, to bring something of substance into a child's life. But us having our cultures stolen in some degrees, we still have some things, but we don't have it as it was. We don't have that understanding that a name is supposed to do that for a child. But this is what our ancestors had. Anyway, the next rite at puberty, there's separate rites of passage for boys and girls to usher them into manhood or womanhood. Now, most of us know that rites of passage, but we don't understand that there's several other levels before puberty that are rites of passage for us. Then, as a young adult, going into particular calling, you will enter a particular society of secrets, whether it's you want to be a djembe player or a bata player, or you want to be an herbologist, or you're in training to be a warrior, whether you're in training to be a keeper of particular ancestral shrines or Orisha shrines or Abosom shrines, or in the voodoo, they call them lower. When you enter into training to become a priest of those shrines, you have a certain level of rites of passage that you go through that's different than other societies or other rites of passage programs, other rites of passage, I should say, not programs, that you will go through. Then the marriage ceremony itself is a rites of passage. It's binding not just the bride to the groom, but to their families and the communities. And it's making, see, we don't understand this. We think that a man and a woman get married in America, they don't like each other. They just separate. To damn with the families, to damn with the children. But in the African tradition, the ceremony is a ceremony that binds you not just to the man or to the woman, but it binds you to the family in the community. And it makes the community responsible for the success of the marriage. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So that is the African tradition. Some of the stuff we doing now, even those who call themselves African centered. I seen years ago when I first started coming around City College, people mud cloth down, kente cloth down, dashikis down, having big quote unquote Afrocentric weddings, and then the relationship, the marriage itself, did not last more than 5 years because it was an African exterior over European interior, an African exterior over a European interior. Frantz Fanon has a book, what is it? Black Skin, White
Mass.
White Mass, talking about, and in each of a W.E.B. Du Bois says there's a double consciousness.
Right.
In each of us, there's an African, but there's also that white mind that's ingrained in us, in our behavior, in our thought pattern. So I don't care if you I'd rather meet a brother that had no African garb on, whatever, but was African to the bone, than meet a brother or sister that's got locks. Like there's a lot of brothers and sisters with locks even. You think that they're conscious because they have locks. Meanwhile, lay down south engaging in orgies in Atlanta, going to the strip club, going to this. But the lock is let me go back a second. Remember I showed you Queen T. Might have zoomed past it. There she goes. Queen T.
With the locks. Right.
Locks.
Facts.
Locks are sacred. You can't wear no damn locks and be engaging in orgies and swingers parties and stuff. The priests wear locks. When you cut your hair to become an initiate priest, you cut it at the beginning, but then you cannot cut it again until you complete your training.
Right.
That's where the locks come from.
That's a Nazarite vow right there. I was a savage when I had my locks. I ain't even gonna hold you up. I ain't know the science of that back then, but I felt the energy though.
And I ain't gonna act like I was innocent either. I did stuff I shouldn't have done, and I'm not proud of. But I hope that in the scales of my actions have been more balanced on the side where it's supposed to be of Africanness. So I ain't gonna act like I'm holier than thou because I done made quite a few mistakes in my lifetime, but I've
Mhm.
always loved African people. That's one thing I could say. Even when I was just saying black people, thinking like an African American, I've always had love for my people. My friends, I used to say, and I guess it's that Southern thing, because even when I went to John Dewey High School, I used to say hello to people, and either they didn't hear me or they just didn't respond. And my friends used to say, I remember I had in John Dewey, I had a friend Jason. He's like, Charles, why the F word? You always say hello to people and they don't respond. I said because I was brought up that if you see people, even if you don't know their names, but you see them constantly, you should greet them. That's how I was raised. That's African way of being that I inherited from my beautiful grandmother. And my grandmother was one of those mothers that hold the family down, that goes to everybody's house, that everybody call, even if they're not her aunt, even if she's not their aunt and she's really their cousin or their grand cousin, they call her Aunt B. And everybody in the family knows Aunt B.
Yeah.
And I'm sure y'all all have somebody in your family or a couple of people in your family that's like that.
Yeah, my
That's,
mother-in-law.
Right.
and they know everybody's name and who's child and how all the connections is made. That's
Right.
that's the griot.
That's the
That's
griot.
the that's the griot, what they call it, jelly. And I think griot is a French word, but that's
Okay.
the
Yeah.
jelly.
Told me that too the other day. Like last year, they told me that the griot wasn't the real true African word. So the proper word is what now?
I believe it's jelly. I could be mistaken, or
Jelly.
somebody can put jelly, DJELI. I believe that's the right word.
Okay.
But if I'm wrong, the audience is listening. If you know the exact word, please put it in the chat and correct me because I'm not above correction.
So we 2.5 hours in. How many more slides you have?
All right, so I'm gonna try to keep speed this up now. So all right, so marriage ceremonies. Then there's installment or other ceremonies related to assuming leadership positions, and then there's a funeral rite, including in places like Ghana. There's a 40-day after the person is transitioned, died. There's a 40-day ascension ceremony, and then there are annual remembrances depending on how that person lived their life. Some may just have the 40-day ascension, and or if they practice Christianity or something, a Christian burial, and then they like glad that nigga's gone. Let's go. All right. So what is the difference now? This is we get into some of the meat now. What's the difference between a male and a female versus men and women?
Mhm.
Ooh.
And we
Mhm.
use a lot of times, especially in the hood, we say, "Yo, this female was that 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 that." This
Mm-hmm.
we don't often say male, but even other women used to say this female was trying to get with my man or something like that. But male and female are biological constructs. It's purely related to biology. So you're either born a male or a female because you have male or female genitalia and hormones, reproductive system, and all of that. Some people will argue that for the hermaphrodite or even the transgender as another gender, but people that are born hermaphrodites, and I've looked into this, even if they're born hermaphrodites are born with both genitalia to some degree.
That's right.
One is usually more developed, the phallus or the vagina is either the penis rather, or the vagina is either one is more strongly developed than the system that goes along with it. But hermaphrodites can't reproduce themselves usually. And one sexual organ, as I said, is usually more pronounced and developed than the other, or both never fully mature. So hermaphrodites are unable to conceive. So that's not a real gender. That's more of a mutation.
Mm.
Also, the physical and biological systems. I don't know what that's there. Let me skip to that. So as biological beings, we're babies and toddlers, then we're prepubescent children, then the pubescent children, then we're young adults, then we're mature adults physically, middle-aged adults, and elderly adults, and then we transition. These are all biological stages of life. It's different than a man or woman. If you're a man, if you're a woman, that is a social construct. their roles, their responsibilities, their privileges that come with being seen as a man or a woman. So, in relation to that, as a boy or a girl, this is from puberty, from birth to puberty, you're not mature, you're immature, you're not fully developed. Thus, the society and role, your societal role and expectations are minimal. You don't have much to do, as you're not fully grown enough mentally, physically, or spiritually to handle any real responsibilities. You are expected to be cared for, protected, observed, and taught by the men, the women, and the elders around you to prepare you to eventually assume their roles when you grow up in the society. As a young man or woman, and I'm talking from puberty to about age, what in America is 18 to 21, but really not until you're still in that stage until some people will say up to 29 or 24, 25. You are still developing, especially as people confuse it now. When you get older, when you get towards that 18, 20, you might be fully grown physically, like grown height wise and grown hair in your armpits and around your private parts, but your mind and your neurological system is still developing. But society begins to expect more from you in terms of your contributions. You have responsibility to help your family maintain itself, even if it's just watching your little brothers and sisters. You're expected to carry yourself more maturely. You're expected to begin to utilize some of that early training and the observations that you were taking part of before you turn pubescent, and begin. You're supposed to start planning for your future, meaning thinking about high school, thinking about college, thinking about what you want to be in life, and thinking about as you get older, especially like after your undergraduate degree when you're around 21 or so, thinking about the future growth of your society. You began participating in an organization that run the activities of the society. You're also expected to be responsible with your sexual activity, having the knowledge that you can now, as a person that's experiencing puberty, you can now produce children. But that's what we're missing with our rites of passage, family.
So what do you think about this whole idea they talking about rigid gender roles, and they don't want to have rigid gender roles, and they talk about toxic masculinity and all of these different things.
Well, I think about that the same way I think when they call people hoteps. It's people not really understanding what the doodle caca they're thinking of, they're talking about. Hotep is a word of peace coming from Kemet.
Mhm.
How do you take that into? I mean, I'm gonna say there are some people faking the funk, as I just said. There are people rocking kente and locks and things like that, are portraying themselves as being conscious, and they're not really conscious, because consciousness is not just about being able to spout Malcolm X and figures and facts. It's about how you live. It's about how you conduct yourself. It's about how you think about the community. That's consciousness. But they're using Hotep, a word of peace. It actually literally means peace. They're using Hotep to describe people with double consciousness, where the white side is really winning. That's not appropriate. Toxic masculinity. A man is supposed to be masculine. A man is not supposed to abuse women and think that women's supposed to walk two steps behind him and all of that. But it's really more so an attack on masculinity itself, rather than just those individuals that are indeed toxic and abusive and stuff. It's an attack on any man that's trying to stand up and critique, for instance, the LGBTQ community, and the propagation of it. People are going to be lesbians and gays. Okay, that's their proclivity. But if you're going to be that, be like James Baldwin. James Baldwin said, I am black and I'm gay, but before I'm gay, I'm black.
There you go.
That's right. That's right.
If you're
There
going to
you
be
go.
gay, be gay like that if you're black. Because it's a larger struggle for us. It's not about LGBTQ being the new black. The new black is the same black Africanness that has always been, that we've been trying to get our people to wake up towards.
Wow. I,
So,
I'm sorry. I just had to cut you off really, really quickly. I'm so happy you said that, brother, because that was the whole Black Lives Matter. And then they start saying, Black Trans Matter. At the end of the day, and I keep saying it over and over again, The main thing that we have alike is that we are black, and we are all fighting for the same thing, which is human rights. Rights, period. As black people, they
Mhm.
turn that whole thing around and start. And I don't have none against anybody, but at the end of the day, I understand, their issue, because a lot of people was getting killed, in their
Yeah,
lifestyle.
right,
However,
right. And but let's back up. Most of the people that's getting killed in that lifestyle, who are they?
black.
They black, right? Black and so-called Latino.
There you go.
So the issue goes back to their being blackness. And I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
tell you something because I worked with that population, and I worked as part of the Happy program at Harlem Hospital, where we had to deal with a lot of young, black men, or they have a designation. People that don't call themselves gay, they call themselves men who have sex with men. Well, that's the designation anyway. They may not call themselves that at all. So, brothers that are coming out of prison and stuff, that, excuse me, that might have gotten acculturated to that type of lifestyle, that don't know how to interact now with a woman. Uh, they might not call themselves gay. They would say they have sex with men, but they're not gay.
Mm.
That's been designated men who have sex with men. But anyway, I've interacted, but before I worked at Happy, I actually worked for a literary agent in Greenwich Village. And for those of you that are in New York, you know what Greenwich Village is about, especially
Mm-hmm.
during the 80s and 90s. Um, the black and Latino gays could not go into many of the white gays places.
Mm.
You have what I'm saying? There was clubs that were exclusive to white men. They even the gay people, even white gay people who were being ostracized for their sexuality and stuff, are racist against black and Latino gay people who are supposed to be their so-called allies. So we need to be clear that they are just as racist, whatever their sexuality is. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, Dr. Clark used to call religions homosexual murder cults. So all of these, uh, you got excuse me, is Islam has an Arab piece that's not too kosher about it. Judaism has a piece that's not too kosher about it. And some of y'all might remember, uh, in here in New York, about calls of rabbis and people in summer camps taking advantage of young people,
Mm-hmm.
young Jewish people, and then Catholic Church taking advantage of young people, taking advantage of
Mm.
Dr. Clark, like I say, used to call them homosexual murder cults. And so just because they're homosexual and they've been persecuted, these average folks that don't have any power, that don't mean that they're not racist. And that don't mean that being gay is more important for us, than us being African or reclaiming our Africanness.
Right.
So that toxic masculinity, to go back to your question on that, that's being used to make anybody that questions what's going on. The constant, every TV show that I turn on now, it's got to have a gay or bisexual couple in it. Now there are gay and bisexual people in the community, but their numbers is not what they would have you believe. Like every TV show now has to have a gay person or a gay couple or a bisexual couple on it. That's not reality. That's a warping of reality.
Right.
There's a lot of gay. There's more gay people than we think of, but there's not that many that they need to be represented on every single show. Even I'm watching Black Lightning. Why Black Lightning oldest daughter? I'm like, damn, this sister's fine. Next thing I know, she kissing on the Asian girl,
Wow.
Catwoman. Katie King wasn't, at least until they started revamping the comics and they even made Iceman in the X-Men gay. But Batwoman wasn't gay. What is gay? Why are you changing the comic law? And I'm a big stickler for that. I don't believe that you should be changing characters from what their nature has been 40, 50 years. If you want a gay character, that's cool. Put in somebody else, but don't turn somebody that's been, you know, uh, um, heterosexual vital leader in the community. Don't all of a sudden say, "Oh, he's gay." Come on now.
Right. They said
I'm a comic book fan, so that burns my, that makes me mad when you change the law around.
2016 Gallup poll concluded that 4.5% of adult Americans identified as LGBT.
How
So
much?
4.5%.
4.5. Now look at primetime TV. Is it 4.5% of the representation on primetime TV?
No.
I say
It's
about
more. It's more like what would you say?
I would say 25% on primetime TV.
I
Okay.
would agree with you, brother. I think it's like I know on every show, every primetime television show, damn near, there with few exceptions, there's some gay character on there now, and I'm like, I don't even want to see the head. I'm gonna be honest, unless it's germane to the story, I don't even need to see quote unquote heterosexual or heteronormative or whatever term. I don't need to see them having sex. What is the purpose of the sex in the show? What is the purpose of all the PDAs and stuff on the show? If it's not furthering the theme of the story, leave that shit out of it. Our children are watching this, whether it's heterosexual sex or bisexual sex or gay sex. If it's not germane to the story, I don't need to see that shit.
Right.
Well, let's just say, because I don't want nobody feeling like we bashing. We not bashing anyone,
We're not
but
bashing that.
we just trying to get a better understanding. Now, I do want to say one thing.
Mhm.
I want to say, maybe some of the Caucasian people felt like that too, because you remember we wasn't a part of movies and shows and primetime TV, and then all of a sudden you're seeing more of black folks on television than it was, back in the day or whatever the case might be. So we
Uh,
might have some Caucasian people saying the
and they
same
do.
thing too.
They do
Like,
say
damn,
that. But the
everything is
reality,
black, black, black.
but the reality of the world is white folks are the minority and black and dark skinned people are the majority. On Spanish TV, if you watch Spanish TV, if you watch Telemundo, you would not think that there's African populations in the Dominican Republic. You would not think that there's African populations in Puerto Rico. You would not think there's African populations in Venezuela or Costa Rica or Honduras, even though there's large African populations in these places. You would not think that there's an African population in Mexico, but the
Mhm.
first vice president who became the second president of Mexico was a black man. But they
Mm.
will have you thinking that if they don't look Indian, quote unquote Indian, or Spanish from Spain, they don't exist in Central and South America. When Brazil has one of the largest populations of African people outside the continent of Africa. But if you look at Brazil, all you see is little light skinned mama, Putirifito's mama doing the samba. You don't see the beautiful black queens that out there doing the samba. You see uh what's this woman? Glory. What's the woman that's on oh god, I can't remember her name. She does shampoo commercials with her son. I forgot her name.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I forgot her name.
Oh Lord, yeah, I
Folks,
forgot her name too.
don't get old. Don't get in your 50s without taking care of yourself, your mental stuff, and your go-to ginkgo biloba and all of that. When you stop forgetting names and stuff when you hit 40, 50. Take care of yourself, family.
I'm in my 40s still already forgetting, man.
Well, and we're gonna go into that. So let's. Oh, but before, so did I? I want to make sure I finish what I was saying as far as the representation. So
Yeah.
white folks feel like they're tired of seeing black folks on the TV and stuff, but black Indians, Asians, and Arabs are the majority of the real world population. So you better be prepared to see black folks. I know
Mhm.
people have complained about Seinfeld about there not being any black folk. I know white people in the insular world and their neighborhoods and in their different communities and suburbs, they might not be used to seeing black people. But black people are the majority of the world. And since the numbers are the birth rates are declining and people are living longer and getting older, but they're not making as many children, And because of this economy, young white people are not marrying until much later, and they're not having as many children. So you better get used to seeing black and brown peoples around you.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, let's go to the next thing. Is there a question or a chat comment, anything that you want me to respond to?
No,
I
no.
just I just want to ask anyone who is watching, do you have a comment, or a question? If so, please feel free to put it in there and we'll read it off for you. Thank you.
Okay. So now, after young adulthood, you're seen as a man or woman. You are now fully matured physically and mostly mentally and recognized as such. Your societal expectations include getting a job or starting a business, becoming a husband or wife, and choosing and marrying a suitable partner of the opposite sex. And I don't want to bash on our LGBTQ people, but marrying somebody or getting with somebody in the opposite sex or getting their sperm or getting their egg is the only biological way to reproduce children, and that's the way that the universe intended. I'm sorry, that's nature. You can't say, oh, that's not how it's supposed to be. That's how the created, or that's how the universe, or however you want to say it, that's the way. And until humans can produce asexually, which some species of plants and stuff can do, that is the way that nature was intended. That a male with male biological parts get together with a female, or with female biological parts, and the male sperm fertilizes the woman's egg. Oh, let me back up too, because I want to make sure that I say a point. When you're a young adult and you go through that rites of passage, they also teach you your roles and responsibilities in terms of sex and in terms of interacting with the opposite sex. And I don't know how sophisticated they are, but if I was given one today, I would teach young men to understand that men reproduce sperm all of their life. The quality decline or degrades as you get older, unfortunately, but women are born with all their eggs from the time of their conception. So when you understand that, and I didn't even know that until I became a sexual health reproductive, and I took whatever they call the sexuality class when I was in junior high school. But I don't remember them ever telling us that a woman is born with all of her eggs, right? So when you understand that as a young man in preparation for dealing with women, women are more in tune with time because they have a limited time to do certain things in terms of reproducing the family. So when a woman now comes to you and say, "Where are we going with this?" And I'm pretty sure some of our listeners or you, brother, you might have had a woman say that to you in the past. Where are we going? Like, where do you see us in 5 years? A woman has a natural inclination to be concerned about time because she knows that after a certain age in her life, she's not going to be able to continue to bear children. And unlike men that keep producing sperms, till it's coming out of our ears, her eggs will, after a certain time, stop being viable. So she has to be more concerned with time. She has to bear children, and once she bears the children, she's the primary caretaker. So she has to make sure that certain things are done in a timely manner, and so that the children, if she's doing her job as a mother, to make sure that those children are fed, make sure that their clothes are clean, or whatever the task is, making sure the husband is doing what he's supposed to maintain the house. Women are more concerned with timeliness than men, unless you understand the kind of divine reproductive root from whence that comes. You're going to be confused. I wish somebody had told me what I learned in my 30s, that as a young man in the period that we typically consider rites of passage. But let me go back. So now, after manhood, womanhood, approach young elders. That's when you start getting your 40s, your 50s. You're now moving into that period when your mental and physical vitality is starting to decline. You still have the same expectations that you had being a man or woman, but you don't snap back. I just say, like you used to.
Mm.
Society expects your energy to to be able to participate in the system to begin to be lessening. In fact, I was just watching TV earlier, and that thing about the testosterone with the two former ball players was on. And
Right.
then the young guy was 40 and they was 50. He's like, how do you, yeah, they're playing golf. How do you guys still look so good? It's so vital. And nutrigenics, whatever it was the answer.
Yeah.
So, society expects your energy to be able to participate in the system and lessen. You are still active in maintaining the system, but you are expected to be moving towards more cerebral, more thoughtful activities with your contributions. You still have a lot to teach young people and are expected to help them when raising the young people. At this stage, you begin assuming taking care of elders, becoming caregivers and such, and burying them as they transition to ancestorship. Now, you reach elder. When you're elder, your contribution to society are expected to now largely be with using your brain and being of a consultative nature, meaning being a guider, being a counselor, being a teacher, writing your memoirs, participating in the government, uh, helping your personal family, you're providing counsel to the members of your family, providing marital counsel, whatever. This right here, between this and young elders, this is where a lot of us get caught in the European paradigm. You understand what I'm saying? Because a lot of us in the European paradigm, when you old, you what?
Feeble.
You're feeble, you become useless. So people are scared to get old when we should be celebrating getting old. Even amongst the people that consider themselves African centered. And this is one of the problems we have with the transit. This is related to our problems with the transition of certain leadership roles. Because you are elder don't mean that you are useless. You have a different leadership role in our community. And we need to recognize that. But a lot of our elders may not, and particularly if you say African American, they want to hold on to the positions in the church. They want to hold on to the positions in the NAACP. They want to hold on to their positions in different UAN, UNIA, and so forth. They want to hold on to those positions when they should be moving to an eldership position. And they should have already had trained young people and how to do X, Y, and Z, and then move to the way slightly as a young elder to allow those young people to begin practicing some of the training that they've required. And then as an elder, you step out and you step into other behind the scenes, kingmaker type roles, consulting roles, like I said, dealing with helping the family, helping the young marriages. You know what I'm saying? Imagine if we had elders out there with a council, a serious council, wherever we was, of elder people that have been married 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 45 years, giving counsel to our young married couples. Imagine how much better our community could be. But our elders hold on to positions now in many cases until they're on death's door. And then they die, and then there's a squabble about who's going to step up into the leadership, and nobody was really prepared for that leadership. In our politics, these people are holding on to leadership until they can't no more, and they haven't groomed anybody else in the community to come in, with the incumbents, blessing, so that they can assume the role and help lead the community. We're having a problem. We need to get back to our rites of passage. And then finally, ancestor. You are no longer physically constrained to the body. Put it in hood talk, you dead, son. However, ancestors still play a vital role in the family. Ancestors, we pray to our ancestors. We ask them to work on our behalf in the spirit realm. Right? If you're Christian, you might pray for them to be at the right hand of God and talk to Jesus, talk to God on your behalf. Mama, I need help. Please send me some help from that side. They still are a vital part of the work that needs to be done amongst the living descendants in the community. The ancestors in the African paradigm are perhaps the closest connected to the creator or creative force the family and the community have. next to the Creator, the Netters, the Orishas, the Abosum, the Loa, which are all akin to angels or guardian spirits or deified saints in the Catholic tradition, energetic principles. Next to these things, they're the closest thing we have to a connection to the Creator. And so we call on them, we interact with them, we remember them, we light candles for them, we put out a plate of food for our ancestors to honor them, to give them energy, give them spiritual nourishment or metaphysical nourishment on the other side, even though they can't physically eat the food. We give them that nourishment to acknowledge that they still play a vital role in our lives and that they still are doing work for us and our families on that side. Imagine if we had to, imagine if we just had that understanding that our ancestors are watching us, that our ancestors are in us, that we are our ancestors, and that they are always present in us and in our lives. How we could change the conduct of our people. And so I'm wrapping up now. I just want to show you a couple of images. So when we see these images, when I copy these, Fukao Bonseki is an elder, an ancestor now that taught the Congo tradition. One of the books was on the Congo art of babysitting. Let me see if I could grab a couple of books that are right here.
Shake the ground, man. You shook the whole ground just now.
One of his books is The African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo Principles of Life and Living. I want to say the name, the full name, Kim Wandinde Kia Bonseki Fukao. I didn't have the pleasure of meeting this person before. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes.
Well,
Big shake. Yeah, I had a book. When I was incarcerated by a brother by the name of John Mbiti. It was called African Religions and Philosophy. And he broke down a lot of stuff about, African religions and different roles within the community. But I come to find out they said that this brother was not right and exact. Have you ever heard of him? We can't hear you now. Yeah, we can't hear your sound. And you're unmuted. I don't know, something that you moved around when you was. Oh, there you go.
okay. Headset with microphone.
We hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Introduction to African Religion and African Religions and Philosophy by John S. Mbiti, Mbiti.
Right.
I mean, he's written other books, but these two books helped me a lot with understanding
Oh yeah.
the common things in African culture. I didn't meet him. I don't even know if he was still alive when I became conscious, but he is
Yeah,
one of.
I read that African religions and philosophy, but then when I later on I found out that they said that he was giving it from the wrong perspective because he was like a Christian minister or something like that.
Right, right. He was a Christian minister, so some of his other books on Christian, the history of Christianity. That's not the exact title, but he deals with the Christian tradition in Ghana and some of the other more philosophical and theological stuff with Christianity. He was an African that was a Christian minister, but and seeing that there's a problem with the ministry in relation to Africa and in relation to all indigenous peoples because a lot of people were taken away from their families, like in the Indian tradition, Native Americans, I should say. They took Native Americans from their families and put them in Christian schools and gave them Christian names and denied them to be able to learn their Native American languages and traditions. And then a lot of those people came out. The same thing with Australia and the same thing in Africa. There's another brother, Maladoma Somé. He talks about being taken away, being forced to go to Christian school, and he had a Christian name, and he was being groomed to become a Christian minister or a missionary. and then I don't remember how, but he started getting back in touch with his original traditional culture of being a Sangoma, a healer, and dealing with interdimensional beings and all of that. And he talked about because he was away in the European schools, he never went through the rites of passage that we consider rites of passage. So he wasn't considered a full grown man yet. So when he came back, even though he was an adult, he still had to go back with in African tradition in age groups. So like 10 to 15, let's say, might be an age group. The 20-year-olds might be an age group. The 30-year-olds is an age group. Even though he was a 20-year-old physically, because he had not committed to the social responsibilities or the rites of passage of the whatever pre-pubescent person, he was still socially a child, and he could not learn what he was directed to by spirit to, and becoming a sangoma until he went through the rites of passage. He should have went through 10 years or whatever it was at that time. So he was still a little boy until he went through the rites of passage. Then after that, then he assumed his rightful place in his age group as a man once he successfully completed it. But that, you hear what I'm saying? There's a lot of men, there's a lot of males walking around here that with beards and everything that look like men, but they're boys mentally.
Right.
They're males, they're adult males, but socially, psychologically, mentally, they're boys. So
Right.
that was a boy that threatened my life last night. He's a boy.
I
A
come on.
man doesn't do that. A man don't threaten somebody with a gun if he has to, unless it's absolutely he has to. You feel
Right.
me?
Right.
Boys are hot headed. Boys want to flip over. I could have, if I did break his mirror, son, I could have ordered the mirror online for $40 or $50 and installed it myself. If I really had broke his mirror,
Right. It's
you
crazy.
gonna kill somebody, but he was ready to kill me for $40 or $50, son.
It's crazy you said that because one day we was we went to go get some shirts, right? We went to go get some shirts so we could get them printed up with my wife's organization on them. And we walking down the street, and some dude, a younger cat, out of nowhere, he like, "Yo, what the f you looking at?" I'm just looking at this dude. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, this dude is out of touch with reality. Either you racist, it's your own people, or you just out of touch with reality." And back in the days in the '90s, that would have been, it would have been a fight. It might have been a fight to the death. Might have been shooting, all kind of stuff.
A shooting or a
Now
stabber.
I recognize, like, yo, these brothers, when they doing stuff like that, they gotta not be dealing with their proper faculties. So I just
No,
keep it
they're not. They're not.
with my
And
wife.
part of it is drugs, but part of it is also what we talked about, the babies, the crack babies, and neurological and emotional deficiencies. That's exactly what it is. But when you grow up and you're not trained to be a man, then you don't know. And unfortunately, a lot of people tell boys to bottle up their emotions. Men don't
Mhm.
cry. Men don't do this. Men don't do that. If we wasn't meant to cry, why would God give us tear ducts?
Right.
Right.
That's right.
So boys not being acculturated properly and not knowing how to handle emotional issues
Mhm.
will lash out in the only way that society has made it acceptable for them to express their emotions, anger. The society is about being physical, being violent, taking over America, taking over Haiti, taking over Cuba. That's the European way, violence, aggression. But that's
Mhm.
not healthy, and it's not warranted all the time. But that's the only way that is seen as acceptable to some degree, anyway. A male expressing their emotions. They're not supposed to cry. They're not supposed to be sad, right? If you're too happy, I saw one brother that was in the street life. He said he couldn't when he was selling drugs. He couldn't smile because the smile or to laugh at a joke was seen as weakness that could be
Mm-hmm.
exploited. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Iceberg Slim said that he used to sniff coke so he could always just have that ice grill.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he said in that book, Pimp, I think it was.
So that's what we're dealing with: criminalization of our young men, those who are not deemed to be part of Du Bois's nightmare talented tenth, Du Bois's nightmare version of a talented tenth. Anyway, the talented tenth was supposed to be a vanguard to uplift the black community, not just by their physical labor, but by their mental and professional, acumen. They weren't supposed to be elites. They're supposed to be a vanguard. There's a difference. They're supposed to be the trailblazers, I guess you could say. Opening up the way for the black community. They weren't supposed to be snobs, right?
Right.
And so while I'm saying that, I also want to say, like, we have rights. What's existing in our community now? We have some rites of passage programs. We have mentorship programs like Brother Michael Elders, right? But there's also another process in the African American community that we need to address, and that process is the process of the elites. Now, there's a process of elites controlled by whites, but there's also a process of elites controlled by African Americans. And these elites are not African in their perspective. They are uniquely consigned to being Americans, not being African. Right? So this process starts with Jack and Jill. And I remember my mother was considering, because we were my mother was middle class. My father, when they were still married, my father worked at Windows on the World. And in 1960 money, in 1960, not even 1960 money, he was making $1,000 a week. $1,000 a week in the 1960s.
That's rich.
You was a millionaire, and
That's
and in our money. And so part of the contention that created the single mother thing in my house was that my mother bought into going out into the world and working, and she didn't really need to, but she wanted to go out and work. And he was against that for whatever reason. I don't know if it was to protect her against white folks, or that he just made enough money, there was no reason for her to go out. But the Jack and Jill process that I almost got exposed to, me and my sister, the Jack and Jill process leads until when you're a teenager, the cotillions. That's when you have your coming out. That's when they introduce you to society. Then from that, there's prep schools. Then you go to a historically black college or university, and you join one of what they call the Divine Nine, the black fraternities and sororities. And the black fraternities and sororities, people have a lot of fanfare and romanticism about that, and there's connections that have to be made, right? But the black fraternities and sororities are screwed up, where they don't respect the other fraternities. You should just be a member of a fraternity and just be able to say, like, we're all brothers, even though or sisters, even though we're in different fraternities, and be able to advance. But part of the networking is certain fraternities are blocking out other fraternities from professions. So one from Alpha Phi Alpha, for instance, might control access to the black medical schools and becoming a black and giving recommendations to people to be doctors or hired as doctors. If you're not an Alpha Phi Alpha, you're a Phi Beta Sigma, you may not be able to access that network. You see the problem with the elitism, and then from that, from college, when you leave college, you join social organizations like the Boule, Omega Psi Phi, and the who's who in the African American community is in Omega Psi Phi. Now, I'm not going to say it's all bad.
Who's
it's bad. The Boule is Sigma Pi Phi.
Okay.
That's the name of the organization. It's colloquially or commonly called the Boule. These are Du Bois's talented 10th. You can't get, if you're not a Boule, you're not going to be able to do certain things in the African American elite controlled part of the society. And this is what Steve Coakley was trying to teach us. Now, there are some outliers within the Boule, and a lot of times they leave. W.E.B. Du Bois was a member of the Boule, but he left the Boule. Asa Hilliard was a member of the Boule, and I'm happy to say that he was a very African, even though it was an African American society. He was a very Africanized member of the Boule. But all the Boule is not like that. If you come to some of the folks in the Boule wearing African garb, they say, "Why are you wearing that African shit?" They'll say that. Dr. Jeffries tells a story all the time of certain folks. Jesse Jackson. Well, let me stop naming names.
Yeah, stop naming names.
I want nobody coming after your show.
Yo, but check it.
They'll hug him, then they'll push him away and say, "You still into that African stuff?"
We 3 hours in, so we're gonna have to close out soon.
All right.
So give your closing, and then we'll.
Well, hold on one second. I just want to show you a couple of things. So these images that you see, these images are based on the rotation of the sun, but they're also keyed into the life cycle and the African understanding of our connection to the universe. So you see these symbols here, and you notice the crosses there, right? I just want to put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
But then this symbol, this is called a Dikenga in the Congo cosmology. When you look at it another way, the yellow, can you see this? The yellow, the black, and the red circles.
Absolutely.
The yellow is understanding of the world that is not seen. In the Congo, if I'm pronouncing it right, it's called Musoni. It's death, transformation to ancestorship. But you have child. Now, this is all relation to the cycles of the sun, and I'm saying that for a reason. When you see the next image, childhood, Kala, you reach your apex at adulthood. You reach the twilight, the sun is setting in November, and then you transition back into the ancestor world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's related to the cycles of the sun. And we see that this is not just the Kenga people. This is a long, centralized component of African understanding. When you see this next image, this is Kemet. It's the same understanding of the sun's rotation in relation to the human life cycle. Kepra, the rising sun. Kepra is a beetle. The beetle, when it's about to, the mother beetle puts the eggs in a pile of dung.
That's right.
In the earth, and then Kepra, the baby beetles rise up out the dung, much like the sun rises up out of the corner of the earth. So Kepra is the rising sun. Ra is the sun at its apex. Ra Atum is the setting sun. And Amun Ra is the sun not at its set, at least from our visual perspective. So the Africans always had and Amun, by the way, means the hidden one. And Amun Ra is this should just be Amun, actually. Ra is the sun at its apex. So Amun Ra, as Amun Ra, the full name is not just the hit Amun, the hidden one. The sun is setting. Amun Ra is the combination of the material and the immaterial, or the visible and invisible world. So these are deep African concepts that we're talking about. So I just wanted to, I'm going to read a little bit of this before we close out. So to help us to understand more the role of the secret society, aka the rites of passage in African culture, we're going to talk about the Mende people. The Mende people are in Sierra Leone and Liberia, and it talks about the sanctions on behavior. Can you see this page?
No, it's real small.
Let me see if I can enlarge it. Among the Mende and the peoples associated with them in Sierra Leone and Liberia, the sanctions on behavior in nearly every sphere of common life derive largely from secret societies, which are rites of passage. These societies are principally the Poro, the men's society, concerned primarily with initiation of young boys, and the Sandy, concerned with women's affairs in nearly every aspect. So I'm going to try to skip ahead now because I know you're ready to go. Then there's also the Wundi. Remember I tell you military? The Wundi is secret society is largely concerned with military training, and it's popular among the Kapa or Western Mende peoples. All right, so Move ahead to the next page. All right. So we see in the rites of passage of these societies, they teach general education in the sense of your social and vocational training and indoctrination of social attitudes and behaviors. It teaches you about the regulation of control of your sexual conduct. It teaches you the basics of understanding of and it supervises the young people and trains them in political and economic affairs and the operations of various social services that are needed to run the community. In the general education, every society provides in its initiation rites a certain amount of social knowledge and instruction, which is in essence is neither esoteric nor specific to that particular society, but the initiation or bush schools of the Pori and Sunday societies are without a doubt the educational example par excellence. You hear that? Par excellence, and are formally recognized as such within the community itself. In other words, unless you go through the Pori or the Sunday, you have not reached your manhood, your womanhood. And let me see if I could get it up. It talks about hold on, I'm trying to get it talks about the different rituals, the herbs that children have to eat, the periods of fasting that you have to go through, the ceremonial rituals. Right here it says a fowl meaning a bird like a chicken is seized, its head is placed on a large stone and is severed by another stone. Then it is thrown to the members, meaning the young boys in the initiation. A official says a ritual word to which the boys give the appropriate response. So there's some memorization of language and stuff that they will, when they can become older, use to train the young men. So it's important that they memorize it and remember it so that they can repeat it back during their ceremony, but also so that they can teach the next generation. Throughout the session, this is repeated for there's a fowl for each bird. There's a bird for each boy in the ceremony, and the ceremony is a warning to the boys to expect the same kind of treatment that the fowl got, meaning your head will get chopped off if they divulge any poro secrets to people that are not, to boys that have not gone through, or women even that are not going through the ritual initiations. The food is then cooked, and see, we talk about sacrifices, a lot of spookism in the community. But in my experience, I'm not a priest or anything, but in my experience as a practitioner of Lukumi, when they sacrifice animals, most of the animals are eaten, unless it's they're eaten by humans, and then there are parts that you give that you might prepare and cook and put down a plate for a particular risha, that for a particular spiritual energy, right? But it's not just chopping off animals' head and doing some spooky witch doctor shit. There's a reason for it. So the boys learn their lesson in this atmosphere and are made to feel at the same time that they are absorbing some of the spirit's own qualities, because the blood that's shed has ashe, as I said, the blood is considered the vessel, the part of the body that controls the ashe is in the blood. If ashe flows through your body by flowing through and being in the blood itself. And so that's part of why they understand in African traditions, you understand that it's necessary, at least to my understanding, and a priest or someone that's listening could correct me. In order for certain things to happen in the physical material world, sometimes some energy, there has to be an expenditure of energy. Money itself is a form of expenditure of energy, because the money has no value, but it's the energy and the mental energy that gives money its value. That's why I don't have to put gold behind it, because if it's accepted by everybody that this is valuable, then that energy is behind it. All it is a piece of paper, but we give it the value by our energy that we put into it. All right. So anyway, so I want to just try to skip ahead because I know we've been going long, but I want you to look at this. It says when the boys come back, he's expected to act certain way towards different categories of people: his own mother or his maternal grandmother, his own daughter or granddaughter, his own sisters or half sisters, his paternal and maternal aunts, the daughters of his brothers and sisters, meaning if you're an uncle, the uncle is the second father in the African tradition. If something happens to your father, his brother is expected to take care of your family.
Mm.
You see how deep the science is behind our people's development, their social processes?
Absolutely.
His wife's sister. And in fact, let me back up. When we talk about polygamy, even in the Arab thing, even though what the Arab Muslim thing is what it is, in the Arab thing, polygamy, as I understand it, started because of war. Men were killed,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so their brother's responsibility was to take on
Take
the
them.
wife, so that the wife is not left out there unprotected, unprovided for. And so it wasn't just, oh, I see this girl, she got a big behind, let me get with that. Or I feel like I have more libido where I could have 2 or 3 women. No, if you can't take care of 2 or 3 women, you don't get 2 or 3 women. And then the woman has her rights. And even if it's a monogamous marriage, in African tradition, when they give the dowry to the woman's family, after there's a binding of the families, they give a dowry to show that they could be able to provide for the woman and also provide for the loss of labor and contribution in the parents' house. They give something to the family as a kind of alms. If the woman don't want to be with that man no more, she could go back to her family. Her family can return the dowry, or what we call dowry. I'm not sure what's called the African tradition. And then the connection is, unless it's children, that's something different. I'm not sure how that's handled. But if a woman is with a man and they don't have children, and they find that they're not, there's not the whole romantic thing. A guy sees a girl, he might talk to the sister and find he likes where she comes from. Then he goes to the men of her family and have a negotiation. The family judges checks out the dude, ask him questions, and see what, if he's, what kind of stuff he's made of. And we had that tradition still here in America until we started migrating to the cities. Down south and in the Caribbean, they say, where your people from? They ask you where your people from. They might ask what church your family go to. That's back in the days.
Yep.
They might, and so because if they know what church you go to, they ask you, and they ask you your family name, and they know your family. They know whether your family is upright people or acting like savages. They're going to give you permission to court their daughter, or they're going to say, no, you can't see my daughter.
That's right.
It's not based on, oh, I like how she looks, or she like how I look. And this is one of the things too with urbanization. When we was in our own neighborhoods, it's segregated. Men nor women could just act any way they wanted to. If a guy was messing with a girl on the low and he got her pregnant, you got to marry that girl.
Mm.
If you got a daughter and she's acting fast, you gonna beat her butt, or you gonna send her to an aunt or uncle somewhere else, to get her out of that behavior, get her away from the bad crowd that she's hanging with. So we still had a lot of Africanisms, even though we don't necessarily recognize it. But a lot of that, when people started coming up to New York and Philly and all these places by themselves, and don't have this family structure around them, it's easy for them to be single mothers and stuff. But we still, even with the single mother thing, as I said, we still had situations where the single mother had support system, or if she was too young, auntie or the older brother or sister or the parents would raise that child. And a lot of times people would raise the children. If you didn't know, you would think that was their brother or sister, when in fact it was their child. Because we didn't have those single mothers out here going solo, going for themselves. There's always support around our women, even when they messed up, around our brothers, even when they messed up. We don't throw away people. Well, so I'm gonna skip ahead because I know we short on time. I know some of y'all.
Yeah, this gonna have to be the last point because we're going up on 3.5 hours.
All right. So we come back to Malcolm again. Now come back to this to say this: are we going to be men and women, or are we going to be gods? I mean, excuse me, are we going to be males and females, or are we going to be men and women that are striving to be gods?
Mm-hmm.
And remember, I showed you the mouse in the trap.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I want us to be like this mouse right here. See, he's not going through the trap. He said, "Bump this trap. I'm going up over the wall."
Shortcut.
He said, I'm thinking outside the box. We need to
There you
start
go.
thinking outside the
Outside the
box,
box. Mm-hmm.
reclaim our Africanness, and move forward, because we cannot, as Brother Smalls has been saying to us, we can't be more white than white people. We
Mm.
can't beat white people at being white people. We're not white people. We're African people. So it's
Right.
time for us to remember who we are. And at some other point, I could come with some other points on the 10 virtues, the 42 declarations of innocence, or what people call the 42 negative confessions, to help us to remember who we are as a people. But I hope that my presentation tonight has been food for thought for many and food for the spirit for many.
Yes.
And I thank y'all, for whoever's still here, for sitting with us from 7, a little after 7 to now 10:30.
Well, I definitely want to say I have learned a whole lot as as an African woman. I've definitely appreciated the knowledge. I mean, it was very fruitful. Um, wow, that's all I can say. I would love, love, love. My husband and I, we talk with. I'm sure we'll talk about it later on, and probably get you to come back again and
That'd be
break
my
down
pleasure.
some more of our history. Break down more our history, because let me tell you something. We can't do better if we don't know no better, right?
That's right. That's right. And the elders say, well, we know better, do better. But if you don't
Definitely.
know, you can't do.
That's right. So, with that in mind, I hope everyone who's on YouTube, and I ask you too, brother, when you get off, share this with everyone else, because this is part of your
Definitely.
podcast as well.
Thank
Um, just wow, definitely. Woo, it was
Like,
excellent, excellent,
I mean,
excellent work.
you. Thank you.
so
Thank
we
you.
had a comment. We had a comment from Robert Hart. He said, "I just want to thank you all, Brother Charles. You are doing the blessed thing. Loads of info and in different subject areas. You never disappoint. Thank you."
Thank you, Brother Robert. And oh, Brother Robert is going to have me at the Families United for Solutions next Tuesday and the following Tuesday. So I want to announce that.
What's your topic?
I want to do something a little different. Because remember, I talked to you about self-efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
for those that don't know, this is one of the terms that the bigwigs in sociology and the welfare system and in different work. I learned it in a workshop when I was at the Happy program, Harlem Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Initiative. Efficacy is self-efficacy is talking about that you could give somebody a whole lot of information or the information to do something. Let me just say that. But unless they feel that they are capable of doing it,
Hmm.
or confident in themselves that they could do it, then all of that is gone for naught. So that I want to do two. I don't want to do presentations per se for Rob, but I want to do a workshop that people actually have to work. So one is going to be on what would a black agenda look like, where I want the participants to actually work out a black agenda. I'm
Mm.
talking about what Ice Cube and Movement for Black Lives put something up, which I haven't had a chance to look at fully yet. But we always talk about voting, and we never talk about an agenda to which to hold politicians accountable,
You're
and which
right.
and to pick people to be leaders based on their ability to fulfill that agenda. See,
Wow. You know
see
what's
the
crazy? That's Mind Detect Mind because my talk at the end
Hmm.
of is supposed to be the history of the Black Plan. So I'm basically going to survey the Black plans over the last century. So that's going to go right into each other, you know?
oh when
Wow.
is that? I
Huh?
got you that. When is that?
That's going to be at the end. I'm on the last Monday of the month.
Oh yeah. Oh, and Families United for Solutions. Oh,
Absolutely.
okay.
Hmm.
Okay, I definitely got to check that out because we had rock the vote, we had rap the vote, We're always telling people to get out and vote, and people think that's all that they want to do. And then they tell us, your ancestors died for to vote. Our ancestors did not die for no goddamn vote. Our ancestors died because they wanted to control the resources and the development of the community, of which get voting for people to represent you to do that is a tool. They did not die just to vote for vote's sake. So when your job is not done after you go into the election booth and pull those levers, that's part of the job. Even though he wasn't for our community, Obama said in a speech that you got me elected. Now I need you to keep me accountable. He told that to black folks, but
Yes.
black folks was all caught up in the optics of the beautiful Michelle Obama and this beautiful black man, Barack Obama, and their two beautiful children, and the Queen Mother. I'm doing this. I'm getting too much like Dr. Jeffries, and their Queen Mother, her mother, being in the White House helping to nurture the children. They was caught up in the optics of that seemingly African thing, but they did not hold this brother accountable one bit. They let everybody else get something from Obama, but the people that voted him in. Our job is not just done after we vote. That's just part of the job. That's not even the beginning of the job. That's in the middle of the job. The job before that is creating an agenda, strategizing how you're going to get the agenda, picking people in the community that have the skills to interact with other people to get you what you need in your agenda, and getting them vote them in, get them in the position, and keeping them accountable, and taking anybody out that can't get the job done. If you had a business, if you owned a business and you hire somebody to be the manager of the business and they're not doing their job, when you fire them?
Sure will.
But we let people stay in these jobs that 20, 30, 40 years until they retire out. That's not what it's supposed to be. But unless we have a clear agenda and a clear understanding of it, then we just gonna be in the same position that we in right now.
Oh, that's deep. That you're right.
And then the other workshop that I want to do is I want to lay down some basic foundation information in both of them, and then I want people to say we got reparations, say we got some black land, whether on the continent or whether here, and we had to create a city. What does a city need? So I want them to work out the infrastructure, what different departments the city runs, or the city needs rather. All of that. I want them to think about all of that. What would go into creation of a black city?
It's crazy you say that, because I said this to my wife a few times. Like, hold on, if we do create a black country or go somewhere, how are we gonna manage the sewer system? What's gonna be the sanitation department? Who's gonna be the engineers to build buildings? And we need carpenters, we need lawyers, we need every aspect of society. We need not just people out there lip professing.
That's right. That's why I talked and back to self-efficacy. Even though I know the value of history, I know that our people are a lot more capable than they take themselves to being. So I want to do these. I don't want to be up there. Like I spoke 3 hours tonight. I don't want to be speaking. I've been First World Lecture Series and all these other things. I've seen people give magnificent presentations, and then the people will just go take that information, be energized, but they don't do nothing with it. We have enough information, even if we never been to a lecture. Now, we might need some grounding. We might need more African systems accountability and African understanding, and some of the things that I talked about tonight. We might need to learn more of that. We definitely need to learn more of that.
Yes.
But as Booker T. Washington said, cast down your buckets where you are. We got to start from somewhere. It's not going to be perfect. You have enough information. If you live to 40, 50 years alone, you did something right. So you can figure out what needs to be done. So I wanted to do a workshop rather than a presentation, because I want people to get confidence in their own abilities, not wait for Dr. Jeffries, not wait for Brother Smalls, not wait for Jim Klingman or who's the other elder, not wait for Adelaide Sanford, not wait for Raymond Winbush, not wait for Naeem Akbar to provide you the answer. All of us have something that can contribute to the pot.
That's right.
So we need to be confident in ourselves. We don't have to have a PhD. I mean, you might be better, have better information with a PhD, but PhD don't pay your bills. You paying your bills some way, right? So you can figure this out. You can figure this out, but you need to be confident in yourself that the Creator gave you enough common sense and book sense to do it. And so these are going to be two exercises that help to build that confidence, that help us to start thinking differently, and that's that.
You
And
know, it's funny. Yeah, that is peace. It's something I just said to my husband today, and I'm sure we're gonna be closing out in a couple of minutes. But I said, whatever they have, we could have too.
that's
Whatever
right.
they could do, we can
We
do
could
it
do.
too.
And
You
I'm
know.
gonna
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, go finish your thought, sister. I'm sorry.
That was it. I was just on my, I was on my amp. Like, we could do it. we got people all around us that can bring certain things to the table. Because I was ready to work on the app, on certain things, and I guess we're going to talk to you off the
All right.
air. All right.
It's crazy because the other day I was watching New York One, and they had this restaurant that was owned by some I think some Latin brothers or whatever. But anyway, one of the things that they said was just so important. They said, "Would you rather have 100% of $100 or 5% of 10 million?" And that really hit on me because it showed that there's a difference in playing a team and having the teamwork as opposed to just taking 100% of a little bit of thing for yourself. So
Right.
if you work with a bigger team, then I think 5% of 10 million might be $500,000. And people don't think like that. They would rather just
Right.
do everything themselves and take their little $100 and put it under their mattress, and they ain't really doing nothing. They ain't really affecting nobody. But if you work with a team, you could be more nationwide, more global, more effective.
Right. And to tell you the truth, nothing effective gets done without a team. I mean, it may be a small team. It may not be everybody in the group, but nothing gets done by uh, efficiently by one person trying to do it all or control
That's
it
right.
all. So, what was the other thing I was going to say?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Wow.
I forgot. But
Well, we want to
yeah.
close out, my brother. I'd like to say thank you.
Hold
Thank
on,
you
hold
so
on, hold on, hold on 1 second. I do remember. It's not that, but I remember that I want to make sure that we understand what Frederick Douglass said when he said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom yet deprecate agitation are men who want the crops without plowing up the ground. They want the rain without the thunder and lightning. They want the
Mm.
ocean without the awful roar of its many waters." And later on, he says, uh, "Power concedes nothing without demand and never did and never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to. You will find out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which we oppose upon them. And these will continue until they are resisted with either words or blows or both." And he was talking about slavery and the question of whether or not black folks were justified in using physical force to free themselves. And so that's what he said, words or blows or both. And actually, he also said any other method that they could use. We need to get back to ourselves. We
Mm-hmm.
need to realize that this white man, as I said in my first things first, is not going to stop oppressing us because it's through our oppression. Oh, and I remember what else I wanted to say to you, sister. Now, you said anything he could do, we could do. Not
Yes.
only anything he could do, we could do. Anything that he has is because we helped build it.
That's true.
New York City could not operate without the black bus drivers and train
You're
drivers.
right.
New York City could not work without the black social workers and the welfare officers. New York City could not work without the blacks in the clerk's office.
That's
Right?
right.
We are the backbones of many of the cities. That's why they're scared and want to push us out of the cities, because we are in many of those municipal jobs helping the city run. So we are doing it for them, but we could do it for us.
But that's the thing, brother. Well, we won't. Like I said, this type of conversation needs to be off air because a plan is not to be out
Broadcast.
broadcasted right now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We need to just
Right.
come to a table and do what we have to do silently
Right.
until we
Right.
get everything all together and then we come out with the bang. So I'm
Right.
with you on that.
Right.
See,
I'm with you.
I also say that what your presentation was so prolific and prominent today because what we're going through is we're trying to mimic an American way of life when in
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
reality we will be more successful if we knew and understood the African paradigm because
Mm.
That's
that's
right.
what made us great. Now,
That's right.
as Dr. John Henry Clark said, we will out Muhammad and out Pope the Pope. And I think
That's right.
that we trying to out white man the white man, basically. So basically,
That's
we
right.
out here trying to succeed in a situation. And I listened to a Leonard Jeffries lecture the other day, and he talked about the 3 C's versus the 3 D's.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
3 C's again,
Communal, cooperative, and collective.
right? And the 3 D's are what?
Domination, destruction, and death.
Right. So we more from the 3 C's perspective as an African people and original people, and
Mm-hmm.
and we're trying to move on the 3D perspective that is a Western European perspective. And that's
Mm.
where we're all falling because we're trying to scratch our way to the top with this
Right.
rugged individualism, and we're more powerful as a collectivist people.
That's
But
right.
they're specific with their Jim Crow and their what was the name of the thing that you read the other day, Queen? What was the thing
Which
you read? The
which
thing
one?
where they said how to break a slave, the making of a
Oh, yes.
yeah. So they
Right
basically
here.
they know by
The
keeping us
Willie
apart
Lynch.
and keeping that Willie Lynch alive, they will keep us from ever being great again by coming back to our collectiveness. Right? You
Mm-hmm.
say it as Ubuntu, like the gods will say Allah when we see Allah when we come together. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all an African perspective that we have to get back to in order to be great. But I think I want to say, brother, thank you so much for this presentation. It's gonna have to be reviewed again and again and again because, as Brother Hart said, it was a lot of information. So it's gonna be a lot of nuggets, and we might have to take this. We might have to take this video up and cut it into little
It's
pieces and
true.
just
Yeah.
give us a little piece here, a
Uh-huh.
little piece there. Unfortunately, on Facebook, they somehow they blocked the video from playing. So now it's on Speak
YouTube.
podcast with the
Mm-hmm.
Ali, and it's also streaming on the God I Be on YouTube. But I
Mm-hmm.
will make sure that I'll share it to um I Am Phenomenal Unlimited on Facebook, and and I shared it already on my page, the God I Be on Facebook.
All right.
So
Are we still in the show, or we off camera now?
now
We
I'm
still
about
on the
to shut
show.
it down right now.
All right. So I'm gonna ask you if you can. I don't know if you can, but if you can I get a DVD of that? But
Oh,
before you say your statement,
I told you about that, didn't I? Nah, we don't even have DVDs, man. We don't even
uh,
do that. But I could send it to you. I'll send you the
uh,
link to where it's at, and you'll be able
uh,
Yes.
to get it from anywhere. You know what I'm saying?
all right. I just want to remind us that we had an elder that transitioned of the Sons of Africa. His name was Professor Edward Scobie. He was a
Oh,
great teacher and scholar at
Wow.
City College. He was a Royal Air Force pilot.
Mm.
He was one of those that were in the Manchester Pan African Conference in 1945. He was a BB. Now he's the black dude, black
hmm
man. He was a BBC. The BBC is the British Broadcasting Corporation. Big, it's
yeah,
like the Yale and Harvard and Oxford of radio.
yeah,
And he was a broadcaster and producer on that. He produced shows on the blacks and classical was considered classical music, uh, and blacks and British royal, blacks in Britannia, with their impact in royalty and blacks British society. But anyway, and he also has two books, Black Britannia and Global African Presence. But he will always, when he came to the Sons of Africa meeting, remind us that we are all that we have. We are all that we need. So I will remind the family that we are all that we have, family. We are all that we need.
Wow.
Say peace, man.
We
Thank
say
you.
peace.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who tuned
And I'm doing Dr. J. Wakanda forever.
I know that's right.
I want to give a shout out to Sheila T, who commented, Robert Hart, we are phenomenal women always. Monique Tanko, Jay Sims, and I think we got a caller. Hold on, we got a caller. We got to give respect to the caller. 1 second.
Call from. To accept, press 1. To send a voice.
This to speak. Oh man, they hung up as soon as they answered. Hold on, let me get him. Let's try to get him back.
Why you do that? I just want to say because you said they blocked Facebook. So
Mm-hmm.
this is why we have to have our own platforms.
I didn't want to keep prolonging the time, but I just had to chime in and say.
Hold up. State your name. Hold up. State your name and who you
want. Come on, talking.
and turn your sound off in the back. We hear it in the back.
Robert, you got to. I know that voice.
Family United for Solutions.
Peace. Family United for Solutions.
Okay, hold on. I don't know what to do here. I gotta leave the room now. Say what?
Okay, peace, my brother. What's good with you? Good to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. This technology scares me. Hold on. Let me see. Say what? Rita! How you turn the volume down?
We hear everything.
Feedback going on right now.
And plus I'm talking. I got the phone. Okay, can you guys hear me better now?
Yes.
Much better.
How you doing?
No, I can't hear them.
You can't hear us?
Okay.
No, because they cut it down.
No.
Peace. Oh man, come on, brother.
My brothers, we're going to just have to continue this conversation when Brother Charles and you, my brother God IB, come on, Families United for Solutions. I just wanted to say and stress the fact that this is what I'm talking about. What we have in common, you know, this is the lead, this is the main common denominator. This is the common denominator. We're all black, as Sister Shanice said, and we should use that to motivate our different missions or our same missions. We got to come together to be more impactful to our people. So not being afraid of sharing and doing together. I love this evening, for real. So let's keep it going. And, you know, it's just support of each other, man. And let's do this thing.
That's what's up.
Definitely. And it's the same mission. We just hitting it from different directions. That's all, brother.
Exactly.
Can't hear anybody.
Just know and understand. Know and understand. I know you can't hear us, but I'm gonna hang up from you now. Thank you for the comment. Just know and understand when you listen back to this that this connection right here is because of Families United for Solutions. I seen brother Charles Asukile Mitchell at Families United Solutions last year giving a presentation, and we kept in contact. So now we're doing things together as well. So that's peace. We definitely making connections, and they're lasting connections, and they're fruitful connections. So I salute all my brothers and all my elders and all my uncles, all my adopted uncles out there doing the right thing, man. And it's definitely peace. And we're gonna continue this mission. This is the Speak Your Mind podcast. Basically, we sit here and we talk about different events in the world and all things affecting Black culture, and we like to make sure that the people are well informed. So with that, I want to say thank you again, my brother. Peace to you.
My pleasure.
Queen, is there anything you want to say?
No, I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, I really, really enjoyed the information, and by us women understanding our, because I think I brought it up on Sunday. My husband, he was like, babe, I got you, and a lot of us females don't understand what those words mean. I
Because you never experienced it. You can't understand it if you never experienced it, if you never seen your mother going through it the way that she should have, if you ever seen your grandmother going through it like she should have, you won't understand it.
We
Because you're
lost.
not used to.
Oh, a phone died. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So a woman is not going to understand that if that's not in her reality, that's not in her experience, if that's not what she's been trained. But the brother's not going to understand his role, what he's supposed to be doing, either if he's not been trained. If a brother don't know that he's not supposed to take advantage, even if, like for instance, we talk about the what was transmitted in culture. There's a song "Poison" that everybody loves, but I could never. When that song came on, I had to stop dancing because I listened to the lyrics.
Never trust a big button to smile.
Never trust the big button to smile. Then the part when they're talking and they say she's a loser. And he said, well, how did you know? Me and the crew used to do it. Right. But if you and the crew laid down with her, ain't y'all losers too?
Yeah, that's a little wild. Yeah, that's
so. This is what we're dealing with. This is what brothers have learned how to correspond and think about our women. And like I said, that's not white folks financed that, and in fact they promoted that purposely, and rather than putting their money in and production and distribution behind people with positive messages. They financed that purposely, but we created that crap. Yeah. We created that 40, 50, 60-year-olds. We created that crap to influence our young people's minds. So we got responsibility just as much as the white folks.
To another forum, because we're gonna have to go in. We go in, and
I left out stuff, brother. I just didn't have time to type it and nor time to say it. I want to deal with how the culture transmitted, how hip hop became trap music, became crunk music, became gangster rap, how reggae became dancehall, how the storytelling and the lessons in soca and calypso became the bacchanal of the dance hall and carnival.
Well, we gonna get into that another day because I know you just like Brother Jeffries, man. If we let you go in, you gonna go in. Tell my wife when you got on here that you was gonna go in. I said, listen, how long it's gonna be? I said, I'm just gonna let him go in, and I knew it was gonna be a long situation, but I knew it was gonna be great information. That's why I wasn't trying to get on too much. But now we going on 4 hours. I definitely got to stop you.
I thank you, brother. I thank you because, brother, before I know you got to go, but I just want to understand this. I'm not as well spoken as Dr. J, and I certainly don't have the degrees, but this stuff is in my spirit, son. It's in my spirit so much that when I dream, sometimes I be talking to young people in my dreams, son. Because I don't get a chance to, because I do the assistant stuff, and because I used to do security when we were younger. I wasn't a person giving lectures and stuff, but this stuff is in my spirit, son. I'll be talking to young people in my dreams, son, and I wake up as I'm talking to them, teaching them history and stuff. In my dreams, even though I don't do no speaking, like this is one of a major speaking engagement for me. But I don't do speaking engagements like that. Your thing, Brother Robin and Family United for Solutions, and I did the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, had a Black History program a year or two ago. But this stuff it's so much in me that it's bubbling up in my sleep, sir. So I got to get it out.
That goes to show that the tree is not dead yet, man. These branches got a lot more life to live, man. And we're going to be the root soon, and we're going to have our own branches. So you know how this thing goes. Right. We keep this thing flowing. But my brother, peace to you. And I bless your presentation.
Peace and much love to you and the family.
Peace, my brother. Thanks again.
Good night.
Good night.